Good evening, everyone. We will start with a motion to reconvene in open council. Moved by Councillor Gerber, seconded by Councillor Fisher. All in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you for joining us tonight for the council meeting. At this time, I would like for everyone to take a moment to remember the tragedy that occurred 31 years ago in Montreal at Polytechnique, where 14 young, talented, intelligent women were killed in a senseless act of violence against women. The violence against women and girls is still far too common, and it needs to come to an end. The pandemic has increased domestic violence worldwide by over 40%. For some, home is not a safe place. If you need help, please reach out. Thank you. And Councillor Gordick, if you'll read the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Today is a significant day. So the Between the Lakes Treaty, number 3, was signed on this day, December 7th, 1792. It's an agreement between the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the British Crown, and it covers an area that includes Wilmot Township and Waterloo Region. The Mississaugas of the Credit are the peoples who are here when Europeans started to settle here in the 18th century. And with that, I'll read the land acknowledgement. We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. First item is council minutes. Recommendation that the minutes of the following meeting be adopted as presented. Council meeting November 16, 2020. Moved by Councillor Fenning, seconded by Councillor Gordick. Councillor Hallman, you have a comment?
Thank you, through the mayor. Just wanted to bring attention to, on the previous minutes, the comment needs to be addressed to change that. The comment regarding the code of conduct is incorrect. The majority of council agreed to give the directive that it was to be completed before the next term of council begins.
Thank you. So noted. Ms. Middleholtz, you comment?
Yeah, we'll take a look at the video and confirm that and make adjustments accordingly.
Okay, thank you. You have anything further, Councillor Hallman? No, okay. There's no other comments, corrections? All in favor? Carried. Next item we have is a public meeting for a zone change application. This public meeting in respect of zone change application 920 Tom and Tracy Mensch, Lot 5, Plan 58M-203, 31 Lozinger Boulevard, New Hamburg. We will hear all interested people who wish to speak on this matter. If the decision of council is appealed, the local planning appeal tribunal, the tribunal has the power to dismiss an appeal if you do not speak at the public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed. I now declare the public meeting open. Persons attending as delegations at this meeting are required to leave their names and addresses, which will become part of the public record, and you are hereby advised that this information may be posted on the township's official website along with your email address if provided. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. Briefly, this application deals with a proposed reduction to a rear yard setback. Typically, setback reductions are dealt with through a minor variance process. However, the nature of the setbacks introduced on last year were related to conditions of subdivision approval at the time. The Regional Waterloo had requested a buffer in place to protect the abutting woodland in which these properties backed into. There's been significant decline in the population of trees on these properties due to the emerald ash borer, and as a result, essentially the setback in most cases isn't warranted, and certainly on this property doesn't serve to protect any trees as they have all been removed. The setback reduction essentially deals with a pool that's been there for a number of years that did not have the benefit of a permit at the time, and also allows for the extension of an existing deck and steps that they are currently proposing on the property. We've consulted with the Regional Waterloo, and they did not have any objections to the reduction of this setback. And their only comment is that we may want to consider doing a more comprehensive review along all of the properties on Loshinger, given the things that have changed since those original setbacks were put in place. No objections or concerns are raised through circulation of this application, and staff recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Are there any questions of council of a technical nature? Councillor Gordick?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, I'm assuming this might be, I'm not sure who this would be actually. So Mr. Martin, I'm going to direct it to you just for the time being. I understand that the region has asked that perhaps we relook at it because of no trees. Is there a reason why we're not retreeing, just as a query?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, we have had some discussions with regional staff responsible for forestry, and their indication is, to a certain extent, if the woodlot is left on its own, it will regenerate based on the seeds of healthy trees within the woodlot. The buffer was essentially to protect the limits of that woodlot, given we don't have any control mechanism in place to ensure that the individual private properties replant trees and maintain them. The focus would be to discourage any kind of impact on the woodlot that's owned by the township. So through ensuring there is still a buffer there, the setback that's proposed still provides an adequate buffer to ensure larger structures that would potentially impact the woodland can't be introduced in that setback in that rear yard area. The 15-meter setback was deemed to be larger than what would be necessary to ensure that protection. So I guess the short answer to the question is regional staff have basically indicated that there is seed from existing trees that should ensure long-term regeneration naturally of the woodland.
Thank you. And I don't see that we have any delegations signed up to address. Okay. Yeah. So I will ask if there's anyone who wishes to address council on this matter. And again, I'll ask if anyone wishes to address council. What's that?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, none of the attendees on the through the Zoom call have indicated that they wish to address council on this matter.
Thank you. Okay, then I will declare the public meeting as closed. So there is a recommendation before you. If anyone has any comments they want to make first, or we'll We'll read the recommendation and get a mover and seconder, and then we'll take comments. Recommendation that council approves zone change application 9/20 made by Tom and Tracy Mensch affecting lot 5, plan 58M-205 to reduce the rear yard setback on the subject property from 15 meters to 11 meters. Moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Gerber. No comments. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the next item is the Citizen of the Year. So every year, the Township of Wilmot recognizes community members for the countless ways that they contribute to the community. Typically, this public celebration coincides with the New Hamburg Fall Fair. However, due to COVID-19, this year looks very different. This year, we have decided to present one Citizen of the Year award in the category of Community Builder. It is my pleasure to present Mr. Mike Scout with this year's Citizen of the Year award. Mike's dedication to the Township of Wilmot is immeasurable. Some of the contributions he has made to the community include Stonecroft, Baden East, Baden West, Beer Crescent, Forest Park Place, portion of Catherine Street and Forest Ave, Pinnacle Place, Plaza, and as well as many other initiatives. He was a major donor to the WRC, member of the fundraising team for Castle Kilbride. Sponsor of Trails Construction and Wetlands Project. Behind the scenes sponsor and supporter of many events, including Optimists and other groups. We are truly blessed in this township to have such an amazing community builder. On behalf of all of council and residents and staff, we thank you, Mike. And Michael was unable to attend, and we will make sure that he receives his certificate and his plaque. So, but we do appreciate Mike because he has been such a big factor in this community for a lot of years. I mean, his family has been, it started with his dad, and then Mike took over several years ago and built, and he has done a lot of tremendous work here. And his appreciation for the support that he's gotten from our community is what we see in his charitable contributions to us. So thank you, Mike, very much. We appreciate that. We should note that we are getting some claps from the members of council are expressing their appreciation for Michael's contributions. So thank you.
Pardon me, Mayor Armstrong.
Yes.
We skipped over a fire master plan report.
We did. How did we do that?
I'm
Oh,
not sure.
well, we will carry on with that now and give us a chance to maybe talk a bit longer. So next item will be the fire master plan report. Chief.
Thank you. Through the mayor. Is our Wilmot Zoom host going to put the slide deck up for us, please? Thank you. Next slide, please. So what I proposed, or what I'm going to do tonight is go through a brief slide deck to give council an overview of the process, the company that was successful on the RFP competition, and basically how everything flowed through to the finished product. And then I'll segue into the report itself and open the floor up for questions at that point in time. So Emergency Management Training Inc. is a company out of Barrie, Ontario. And as you can see, they have an extensive background in master planning reporting, whether it be fire, paramedic, and others. One of their specialties is emergency management per se, such as planning for a pandemic or something of that nature. So they have a significant background in that field, and a number of studies, which include facility studies and whatnot. Next slide, please. The Fire Master Plan Committee was struck and consisted of 10 members, as outlined on the screen before you. I want to thank each and every one of the members of the committee. There was an extensive amount of background work went into this project, and all of your input and support throughout this process was invaluable to the final product. Next slide, please. So where we sort of started off with the project, we looked back at the 2012 Fire Master Plan, and we looked at all the recommendations that were in that plan, and we ensured that we had completed all of those recommendations, and that provided us a fresh start. So this is where we stopped, and now we're going to proceed forward. It showcases a real true demonstration from the township on how council commits to fulfilling the obligations of the reports, or the plans, I should say. And I think that's a real accolade that this township does take these fire master plans, or master plans in general, very serious once they're completed and approved by council. Next slide, please. So we went through a variety of processes. Very important, I know it's very important to this council, is public engagement. And the fire service is always interested in what the public, how they feel about the fire service that's being delivered to the community. So we held 3 public open houses, which were attended at the 3 locations. The New Dundee Community Center, St. Agatha, and the Wilmot Rec Center. Next slide, please. We also spent time going to each fire station on a training night and had discussions with the firefighters to get their feedback as well. Next slide, please. There were individual stakeholder meetings with key staff members, as indicated on the screen, so that we could get a specific feedback on a variety of subjects as we segued through the plan. Next slide, please. And then we engaged in stakeholder surveys with both the community and firefighters, and there were a number of questions that were sent out to the community and the firefighters to get responses back, which again feeds into the overall plan. Those surveys were conducted in August, September of 2019, and of course advertised through our local media and websites to try and get as many survey recipients as we could. There was also a focus group conducted. The focus group was a shortlisted group of volunteers that were asked by the consultant to see if they would like to attend a specific meeting, and these people volunteered their time to provide further insight or further detail into what they felt was part of the fire delivery model for our community. Next slide, please. I won't read all of these off. There's an extensive list, but these are the performance measurements or the standards and best practices legislations that are used to go into fire master planning. Next slide, please. And as you can see, the list is very extensive and goes on, and I could add more, but I felt the 2 pages of standards was sufficient. Next slide, please. The other thing that is very important to the province of Ontario is the 3 lines of defense And as you can see, education is our #1 line of defense. Inspections and enforcement is 2. And emergency response, which is a reactive measure, is our 3rd line of defense. So we really try to focus on the education piece to the community. If we can prevent a fire from occurring or an incident from occurring, then the other 2 items don't matter. If we can't do it through education, then we'll do inspections and enforcements. And of course, if all of those areas don't measure up, then we'll of course do the reactive response and attend whatever emergency comes forward. Obviously, that 3rd one is the last one we don't want to happen, and we try to prevent those at all costs. Next slide, please. Just wanted to point out that in spite of COVID-19 jumping in front of us, we did intend on having this project completed earlier in the year, but as everyone knows, COVID really played a significant role in hampering workloads. And completing this project was a significant accomplishment for the fire department and all the committee members to continue to feed into this project. So I really have to say thank you so much to the Fire Master Plan Committee. And I also have to thank key staff members and of course our senior management team who also reviewed the plan in its final stages. So I thank everyone for the fantastic effort inputted by everyone. Next slide, please. So that's the end of the slide deck, and I'll slide into the report now. And so the Fire Master Plan, April of 2019 was when the Fire Master Plan was approved by Council to move forward to the RFP process. And once we proceeded through those various stages, we did come to Emergency Management Inc., Training Inc., to undertake this process. I think I've covered most of the high-level stuff through the slide deck. And given the extensive documents that are before you, I think I'll open it up for questions. If any of the council members wish to ask any questions, I'm here to answer those.
Thank you, Chief. I too want to commend the committee. I want to commend staff and you and all your hard work. It has been quite a chore to get to this point. So thank you very much for all that hard work. Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. And as mentioned previously, Councillor Gordick and I were on the Fire Master Plan Committee. And I think it really does give a good short-term, middle-term, and long-range plan to assist the fire department in the vision for the future. And definitely a lot of time and energy went into the document. And I really want to thank Chief Leeson and his staff, all the hard work that went into it. And I'm totally in favor of accepting the Fire Master Plan.
Thank you. Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong.
You're muted, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to you, Chief Leeson. It may be premature to ask, but I noticed obviously in the long-term capital, the considerations for a redo of the Baden Station, a relocation, a redo of the New Hamburg Station. Given the long-term nature of the project and the long-term residential growth of the two centers closer to each other, is there any consideration given to a single station to serve those two sites, or is that something that is still to be considered or is already off the table?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, that consideration was given through this study of station locations and call clustering. That particular model would be off the table given the volunteer nature of our department, yeah. Response times. There is no way of strategically locating one central station. Therefore, that's why we had to continue with the two fire stations as pardon me, as they stand today.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then maybe just one other follow-up. It's page 27, I think, of the Fire Master Plan, page 60 of the agenda package. There's some I mean, there's lots of stats in the report, but the one that sort of jumped out to me was the number of annual occurrences. There was a table showing, sort of comparator municipalities. We had about 800. It was nearly maybe double the average of the other townships. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that moving forward.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, it's very difficult to pinpoint why a call volume in one municipality would be vastly different than another. And what it really showcases is how a township neighboring us or 200 miles away can be so vastly different in many ways. And some of those things could be as simple as we have a 4-lane highway running through our community where they don't, or we have a rail line that runs through our township and they don't. There are different things of that nature. We have a very dominant seniors community here. Maybe the other communities have a lower and medium age in their community. There's just so many factors that it can affect that. You'll also notice in the fire master plan that one of the recommendations is to take a look at our medical response process. And if council approves this report or this master plan tonight, our next step will then be to look into seeing how we can modify our medical responses to target the life-threatening situations that fire services can make a difference on those calls, rather than going to some calls that we currently go to where we're actually asked that we're not needed and we're turned around. So that may reduce our call volumes to some degree as well. I certainly can't speculate on what that would look like, but I can assure you that it will go down some. So that may bring us a little more in line with some of our comparators as well.
Thank you. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Chief Leeson and to all of the committee members. Thank you for all your hard work on this. I know it's a really important document and a really important piece of planning for our community. So thank you. It's very evident that a lot of thought and a lot of effort has gone into it. It's probably not going to come as a surprise to some people that I want to talk about Station 3 replacement. That's something that I think needs to move forward sooner rather than later. And currently the plan is to begin planning 4 years from now. I would like support from the rest of council to ask for that to be moved up to the near term 1 to 3 years with a hopeful completion date of 7 years. So that essentially the planning is in the 1 to 3 and the implementation or construction would be in the 4 to 7 year range. So I'm going to ask for the support from the rest of council and ask for that to be amended tonight.
You want to comment on that, Chief?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Thank you, Councillor Fanning, for the input. And we did have a brief conversation on this topic, and I completely understand where you're coming from. It's certainly a council decision. I'll stand true to the report. I feel that the timeframes were responsible and sensible. However, I completely respect council's direction. If you want me to move the timeframes up, I will do so, keeping in mind that some other things may suffer if we put the added workload on too, but that's fair.
Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll just jump in. I would say I agree. Thanks for the question, Councillor Fanning, and I agree with the chief that there is a difference, I think, between this report, the plan and its timing, which are recommendations coming out of the consultant and also the steering committee as a whole supporting it. And what I would say is more a part of the budget process. It will be coming forward in our update of the 10-year capital plan in just a few weeks, about a month. The timelines that go into that 10-year capital plan, I think that's probably the better avenue to make that shift in timing rather than through this plan itself. This plan is a kind of a third party document with recommendations to the township. We control the implementation timeframes through the budget process, and it's probably better suited there, but that's what I would speak to. The other piece just being the township has a pretty large capital program over the next few years, significant costs, a lot to do with underground infrastructure, growth related costs on the community. So we should be cognizant of that with the potential debt burdens or fiscal impacts going forward. But again, thank you for the question.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Councillor Gordick?
Before I speak, I just wanted to confirm that Councillor Fenning isn't finished because she has her hand raised, so I don't know if it was a follow-up.
Councillor Fenning, did you want to speak now or?
Yes, if I might. It was a follow-up. I appreciate the comments from both the chief and from the Director of Corporate Services. And to Mr. Kelly's point, yes, I recognize that we have a huge bill, so to speak, coming due for our township with a variety of substantial infrastructure projects. However, I believe that this is something that should not be delayed because I think that it's a matter of risk management. And to me, I don't feel comfortable with the amount of risk that we have in delaying it. So again, I absolutely recognize that the infrastructure piece is huge for us. And I would hope that we could at least begin the planning. And with all due respect, I don't believe that I'm not comfortable waiting for the budget process to talk about the timing of this, because this is a strategic plan for our fire prevention services, our fire and emergency response services. And to me, you know, to not call out that this is a priority to us in it is just not responsible. And, you know, I say that with full respect to all of the staff and the expertise that you hold. But I see a risk to our community, and I think we need to address it. And I think that we need to address it clearly in the plan that we make for mitigating risk in our community.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gordick?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So this was also just, it wasn't a big contention for me, but it was a comment that I had brought up to Chief. While the report was unanimously accepted when we had our committee meeting, it was an issue that I had raised with Chief that I believe we should move it up and to the point that the New Hamburg department or fire hall, the backup plan had not been part of the recommendations, and I had asked for that to become part of the recommendations. And being that we have so many variables within our township, such as perhaps maybe the old barn, as some people like to call it, could be used as an emergency. We don't know if any of the trucks would fit in there. We also don't know if that old barn will ever be converted. So using that as a backup plan then becomes another backup plan to go somewhere else. And we've already witnessed, at least since I've lived in this lovely community, 3 major floods. And I don't, agreeing with Councillor Fenning, I don't believe that we should be waiting 10 years to have a new fire hall where one is located in a flood zone, that we keep having these 100-year floods. So again, respectfully, with regards to the budget process, it was a point with the chief that I did want this particular item looked at with regards to the fire master plan. And finally, with regards, and again, I also spoke to Chief about this and had advised him I was going to raise this up, the 2 positions available for hiring. I don't have a need for them to be changed within the fire master plan, but I would ask that Mr. Kelly at least put these 2 hiring processes, move them forward a little bit and perhaps look at them for the 2022 budget, the training officer and the deputy chief. I believe that our chief has a lot on his plate, and having adequate support for him is paramount to our fire services. So that would be my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Gordick. Councillor Hallman?
Thank you, through the mayor. So I want to second Councillor Fenning's amendment for that. That was one thing that was on my list. Also, I want to thank the chief and the committee for this outstanding, thorough fire master plan. If there's one thing our community cares about, it is definitely their fire services, especially when they come on their doorstep when they need them the most, whether it be a medical call or a fire. So thank you for everyone for this great report and the planning that goes into that, and your time and commitment for it. It's great to see this, and I share the comments on page 73 that our fire services to the community is phenomenal, and the community feels that they are served by a professional and dedicated group of volunteers. Beautifully put, and I definitely echo that. With the expected growth of 7,000 additional people by 2031, page 41, page 145, page 168, all referencing section 18, mentioning that in the near future of the 1 to 3 years, I feel that 3 years is just not acceptable, and within 1 year is more adequate. With climate change, this is only on the increase, as mentioned on page 65 in section 2.2.4. This is one of those decisions that I can't be in this seat and support for the delay of that. And this is referencing for those who don't have the master plan in front of them, the issue of having a backup plan for the Hamburg station. I have a business in the downtown core, and I watched out of my windows the water going through the fire hall over down Mill Street, and you cannot have firefighters responding to this in the community with having the fire station underwater. It should have already been, this should have already been addressed, and so absolutely, I feel that this needs to be within 1 year, not 3 years, and I'm asking for council support of that. To quote page 140, if a flood were to occur, the community and firefighter safety could be at risk because they would have to drive into an affected area. I witnessed this. Also, all electrical related operations at the fire station could be compromised. Again, I feel this is of the utmost priority for fire services, not only for our, for the entire community, and I would like council support of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher?
Yes, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I think a whole lot of planning goes into, time and planning goes into a 10-year capital budget. And I think it would be irresponsible on our part to just say tonight we're changing it. I think some thought has to go into it, and I can't see the harm on waiting 1 month to discuss it further in the budget process.
Thank you. Councillor Hallman?
Sorry, my mute button was sticking. Thanks, through the mayor. As I have mentioned that, I think this is, the comments have echoed quite clearly within the report itself as well, saying that I don't feel that this can wait a month. If we're passing this evening and this becomes, as Chief had said, the tools that they go back to use. Can you comment on that, Chief, that this is indeed what this document we're passing this evening is indeed the reference material moving forward for the next several years?
Go ahead, Chief.
Through the mayor, yes, we use this document as a planning document. It's put on our work plan, and it guides us through the next 10 years through the various processes. I do have to say that it does become part of the annual budgeting requirements, whether it be capital or operating. If there's anything, if it's a new staff member, it'll be operating. If it's a new fire station, for example, there's various stages that we'll have to embark on, whether it be land acquisition or possibly zoning and zoning requirements. It could be architectural. It could be, there's a number of moving parts to make a fire station appear on a piece of land at some point in time. So yes, it is a planning document. It's I'm being pulled in two directions here. I want to be a fire chief that stands in front of the community and says, let's do good, sound, responsible planning. But I also hear, I have that sense of urgency sometimes as well with the situation that the station is in. And, I hear you. I still think we need to step back and do some good, careful planning and make sure we're doing the right thing. And again, whatever council decides, my work plan will fit into whatever your direction is.
Follow up through the mayor to Chief.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Chief, I know you just muted yourself. Thank you, through the mayor. So can you just clarify again for me? I just feel like I got lost in the weeds there just a little bit. That in this fire master plan, if we amend to request or add a section at the end to comment that based on council's directive, the priorities will be yada yada, not so much the most formal words as the clerk takes notes, but can you just clarify that would be how that process would work within that document?
Go ahead, Chief.
Through the mayor, the 1 to 3 year, for example, that short-term window, that window can be 1, 2, 3 years. And that's when we incorporate it into the budget. So for example, if it was one of the recommendations that said we're going to do that between next year and 2023, then it gives council the latitude to approve that project based on I would come forward with justifications during that time frame, and then council would look at those and say, yes, this is the time to do it, Chief. You're within your fire master plan recommendation. And is that answering your question, Councillor Holman? I hope I'm answering your question appropriately.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, through the mayor. So I think that you've clarified that for me. So yeah, so with it stating in the fire master plan currently within 1 to 3 years, if I were to receive council support this evening to say that it is a priority of council to have that within more of the 1 year plan, that you would bring that back with justification to council through the budget process, and we would achieve that goal.
I will, if I may, through the mayor, I will point out when it comes to the fire station itself, it would be absolutely impossible for me to do that in a year, though. Please understand that process. I hope you didn't mean that, Councillor Holman.
No.
Okay.
A follow up to Chief. Sorry, yes, Chief. For my piece first would be to find a location, as we are already in December. We've had floods in January and February that have devastated the downtown community of New Hamburg. I think it would be absolute paramount to find a new location for temporary use during an active situation, and that needs to happen within a year. Then, as Councillor Fenning is saying, to move up that time frame, I also support her on that. So thank you. Yes, to clarify what I've been advocating for.
Thank you. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong, to the chief again, and I suppose to all of council. Last year, in the budgeting process, I raised the issue of Station 3 and my concerns there, and I was very clear that I would not be satisfied with a delay on beginning this process. And I was very happy with everything else in this plan. This is the one point that, to me, it doesn't make sense from a risk management perspective. It doesn't make sense from a fiscal perspective. If we're looking at finding an alternate location, climate change is real. We're seeing that in the number of floods that we're having. How many times and how much money is it going to cost us in the interim? Land prices aren't getting cheaper. All of these costs associated with building are not getting cheaper. And that's why I don't see any reason that we should delay this. To me, I can't live with that risk. I just can't.
Thank you. Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to maybe Mr. Kelly and Mr. Leeson. I certainly understand the points that Councillor Fenning, as far as moving the planning up to the 1 to 3 and getting the Fire Station 3 construction accelerated. I understand that. And same with Councillor Hallman, her concerns with getting that backup plan in place sooner. I'd be comfortable with endorsing that tonight. However, I think either way we do it, whether we make the changes to the master plan or whether we leave the master plan the way it is, I think I'm correct in stating ultimately it will come down to budget time. So this will sort of justify, in a way, I suppose, making some changes. But I know there's been lots of things in master plans that sometimes get accelerated and sometimes get pushed back. So I'm comfortable making those changes. But I just think we would all need to understand that the decision making it really will be down the road in a month, and there really will be. And at that point, we'll have choices on the table, and we'll sort of have to say, you know, what impact does this have in a global sense? And I don't want to predict that outcome, but I think putting it in the plan is fine. But ultimately, either way, the budget process will drive it, and we'll need to sort of sharpen our pencils and you know, make sure, you know, rediscuss our priorities at that time. Because if we're going to make this a priority, then there might be something else that is also a priority that we might just have to bump around a little bit. And that's what budget time's for, and that's what capital planning's for.
Thank you, Councillor Gerber. Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I'm just going to address this more as a procedural sort of a matter. With regards to master plans, there are recommendations coming forward from a consultant, so we wouldn't necessarily make changes to the plan. What I would recommend council does here, if this is indeed the will of all of council, is that you would be putting forward a recommendation, or sorry, an amendment, an addition to the recommendation itself. So the recommendation would be as it is already within the report in the agenda, and further that, and then if that is what council is looking to do, is to put it actually in a resolution as opposed to saying change the plan, if that makes sense. I believe Mr. Kelly has some additional comments on that.
Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Armstrong, I completely agree with your comments, Clerk Middleholtz. And I think to Councillor Gerber's point, if we went back and actually wanted to get changes done to the plan and the recommendations within the plan itself, that's going back to the consultant, which in my mind is going to incur additional costs that we can take care of internally through the budget process with existing staff. So again, I think to Ms. Middleholtz's point, a simple amendment to the recommendation indicating that and further staff review the timing of said projects should be sufficient rather than change the plan itself. Again, that's my opinion, but I agree with Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So thank you, Ms. Middleholtz, for that clarification. I was more going back to what Chief Leeson had said, is that I was concerned that if we use the document as a planning process, that the plan of being 3 to 5 years could be forgotten, or not forgotten, but not seem as important. So having it put in as an amendment to the recommendation for both moving up of the timeline for the fire hall, as well as moving up the timeline for the backup plan for the new Hamburg station, I would be in agreement with doing that as a recommendation, amendment to the recommendation for this evening, so we don't have to incur extra costs with the consulting company. Thank you.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you, through the mayor. Thank you, municipal clerk, for taking care of that for us and that explanation. So I would be in support of the clerk's suggestion of just adding that to the report. I would also just like to clarify, if the clerk can for me, that would that be added as well within the document that we're receiving this evening and not just within the minutes of the package?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I can't speak to Chief Leeson's process with regards to this. This is a resolution of council. Resolutions have a certain legislative status when they're passed by council. So it's the idea of it just being sort of forgotten is more down to how Chief Leeson deals with it afterwards. And I'm not sure his process. So I would have to ask him. But then it's also, this is not just a matter of we're only dealing with it tonight, unless we all forget about it in a month. It's going to be also in the capital forecast as well.
Councillor Hallman? Councillor Fanning?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Clerk Middleholtz, you mostly answered it, and that actually causes me to redirect it to the chief to request whatever method it can be included, please, in the master plan, as however that is done for the process that's most appropriate for you, and for creating this document, because I think it's very important to communicate that to the community.
Chief?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, and to the members of council, the amendment that would be added in would be added to my work plan and proceed as directed by council. It's very, very simple. It's definitely not going to be forgotten. When council asks me to do something or directs me to do something, it shall be done.
Okay, thank you. So I see no further comments. Now, the next item is the recommendation, and if we want to add a third paragraph, we should have something drafted to cover that.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, procedurally, somebody would need to move and second the motion as it is now, and then we would be able to have an amendment introduced.
Thank you. So that is moved by Councillor Gordick and seconded by Councillor Fanning. Someone like to amend that? Councillor Fanning?
Thank you. So, Clerk Middleholtz, but do you want to draft something, or do you want me to try and phrase it right now?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, as I've sort of gotten accustomed to doing, if we want to do a share screen, if the Zoom host could allow me to do so. I sort of did some fast typing. And then if council wants to provide me with some direction, and then if necessary, we can take a brief recess for me to wordsmith it as necessary.
Thank you.
Okay.
So if you like, we could take a 5-minute break.
I would need a little bit of direction from council first, sir, through you, Mayor Armstrong.
Certainly.
May I?
You may.
Thank you. That the planning, I'm just looking at the document here, recommendation number 17 regarding the New Hamburg fire station, planning be moved up to the 1 to 3 year or near term timeline, and that final construction be moved up to the 4 to 6 year timeframe. And I believe, as Angie had said, the identification of an alternate location in case of a flood at in the interim be moved up to happen within the next year. Is that correct? Okay. And Chief, that's Okay.
Staff able to make a suggestion at all on this, Mayor Armstrong?
You may.
Yeah, just the first part there, that recommendation 17 be moved up. I would just say that recommendation 17 be moved up, but at the end of it, within the township's updated 10-year capital plan, like not that we're changing the recommendation within that from the consultant themselves, correct? I think that's what we talked about a bit ago. We're not getting the consultant to change their recommendation. We're changing how we implement their recommendation within our own document.
Sorry, through you, Mayor Armstrong, may I just clarify quickly? So when we say that, well, I support not going back to the consultant and requiring further costs be incurred. It is really, I want to make sure that this language makes it into the plan, not just into our work plan or budget, but also into the fire plan. And this language is going to do that as well. Can you confirm that for me?
Call on Rod.
Chief?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, if I may make a suggestion, if this would suit council, if we were to state something more to the effect, more open, to say that the planning, development, design be placed into the 10-year capital forecast with a goal of achieving final construction in 7 years, something more open-ended like that, would that satisfy the wording, Councillor Fenning? For that way, we're starting the process right away, but we're giving time for all of those various steps to occur within that 7-year window, within the 10-year capital budget. So there is some flexibility for council to make decisions as well, if for some reason it had to be year 8 instead, just for some reason.
Grant has also raised his hand.
Yes, in respect, just to help this along, when it gets to the other item relating to an alternative backup, is that was recommendation 18. So we could kind of match both so that you know which area within the master plan you're referencing to. As another assistant, is that recognizing that the master plans typically are put on the web page after and within the fire department service area, is that we could add just into the front portion. So you actually still have, and you don't have to go back to the consultant with making alterations to the report, but you can add the front to it, any of the actions from today's meeting, so that the public is aware of it for the future as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so sorry, do you think we'll skip it's the long version or the short version?
So everybody can see the screen and see if that is what they want. Ms. Middleholt?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. With regards to this, the chief is recommending that this paragraph here be replaced with that planning, development, and design be placed in the 10-year capital forecast for construction to be completed within 7 years. So is council wanting this replaced with the more concise version that provides a little bit more flexibility for timing?
a show of hands if you're okay. Have a show of hands to see if you're okay with it. Or Councillor Fenning, you wanted to comment?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Chief, considering what we've all discussed and what you know I'm asking, is this sufficient detail and information to achieve it? If you say that it is, then I'm absolutely fine to rely on your expertise.
Chief?
Through the mayor, the only thing you should add in that, just add in the piece that recommendation 17 be added into that to identify specifically what article we're speaking to. And then the as CAO Whittington pointed out, the alternate location is item 18, and that should be specified as well. So we make sure we're specific, and then that can be put into the amendment at the front of the document. And that meets your needs then, Councillor Fenning, as you see them. Okay.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong, I want to say thank you to all of the staff for assisting in moving this recommendation or amending this, and for working with us on it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Middleholt?
I believe Councillor Holman had her hand raised as well, but when I would like to have, as I said, a 5-minute recess to word this better, if we could, please.
Very good. Councillor Holman?
Thank you, through the mayor. Actually, the CAO took the words out of my mouth with the comment of adding section 18, so I am all good. Thank you.
Perfect. So we will take a 5-minute recess. Okay, thank you, and we're back. Ms. Middleholt, did you want to share your screen and show that? And I will read the recommendation and see if that's okay. That as per the recommendation from the Fire Master Plan Committee, the Fire Master Plan dated December 7, 2020 be endorsed, that the 10-year capital forecast and annual operating budget be updated to include recommendations under the approved Fire Master Plan, that the planning, development, and design for the construction of a new Station 3 for New Hamburg, as indicated in Recommendation 17, be included in the 10-year capital forecast for construction to be completed within 7 years, and that identification of an interim alternate location, as noted in Recommendation 18, occur within the next year. So that's the motion as amended. And we need a consensus from council to accept the motion as amended. To accept the amendment, sorry. And an indication from everybody, a show of hands on the screen. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. So now we vote on the motion. All in favor? And that's everybody. Thank you very much. And again, thank you to staff for a job well done. So now we go into, there's no items in the consent agenda. We go into the reports. So the first item on the agenda is from Parks and Facilities, major ice user COVID-19 red zone fee reduction. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. First, I'd like to acknowledge that Manny Jones, my Manager of Customer Service and Community Development, is also on the call tonight in case we need her to help answer any questions. As I'm sure you're aware, COVID-19 has had a particular strain on Parks and Recreation Services this year. And I do want to take a quick second to shout out to my staff who have been superstars through a very difficult time. But I also want to acknowledge our volunteer-based organizations who have had a tremendous stress and extra workload placed on them. They certainly deserve extra recognition as well. It's been particularly difficult for those groups that manage large number of kids to keep them active. So saying all that, on Monday, November the 23rd, the region of Waterloo was moved to by the province into the COVID red category, as you're aware. And this resulted in the number of participants on the ice being reduced from 25 down to 10. So this particular report is specific to our ice user groups, the New Hamburg Hockey Association, the Wilmot Girls Hockey Association, and the New Hamburg Skating Club. And these organizations have requested a 50% reduction on prime time ice costs as a result of the reduction down to 10 participants per ice time. So the staff report outlines this request, and this similar request has been moved across the whole Waterloo region. Ranging from 25 to 50% reductions being approved by various councils throughout the region of Waterloo. At the time that this report was written, there are two changes that I wanted to note for council. The reduction in the chart for Kitchener reflects 25% off, but the actual council approved rate was 28% off. And the reduction for Woolwich Township shows 33%. That was the proposed reduction by their staff. However, council approved a 50% reduction in that township. So the 106.74 rate would drop down to $78.77 per hour, just for your information. So just to clarify, the reduction of 50%, it would be in addition to the existing 35% discount that the minor sport groups get off of our regular rates as per the fees and charges bylaw. So it averages into about 67% off of the normal prime rental rate. This request is not a request to change the fees and charges bylaws, but rather to provide an emergency rate during the pandemic red category only. So it would only be just during this time, and if we go out of red, come back into red, it would likely apply again, but not a change to the actual bylaw. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the report. And Manny is also, Ms. Jones is also on the line, and I'm sure Mr. Kelly may be able to help as well if there's specific questions to the bylaw. Thank you.
Councillor Fenning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. To the Director of Parks, Facilities and Recreation, I want to say thank you. I know, and please pass the thanks to all of your staff. I know it's been extremely difficult and they've had to face a lot of stresses above and beyond the norm and above and beyond what most of us have had to face in this time. And thank you for coming to the table with us and helping us to serve our community effectively. So that's all I have to say, is a huge thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fenning. Anyone else wish to comment? No. I want to thank Ms. Jackson and her staff for the great work that they do out there, and the fact that they've been able to keep things going. They've done a great job. Really appreciate it. Okay, seeing none. So the recommendation that an additional 50% rate reduction to the New Hamburg Hockey Association, Wilmot Girls Hockey Association, and the New Hamburg Skating Club ice rental rates, while the region of Waterloo is in the COVID-19 Stage 2 red category, be approved. Moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the next item is the Sandhills Road Multi-Use Trail. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. So this report outlines two components of trails-related matters. One is an update with respect to cost estimates for the Sandhills Road Multi-Use Trail. And the second component is just an overall summary of how funds donated to the municipality have been utilized to date, and ultimately the recommendation for the closure of the Trails Trust Fund, which is by bylaw slated to expire at the end of this year. Firstly, with respect to trails that have been developed over the last number of years due to the generous donations from both PAB Holdings and Scout Corporation, a map is attached to the report that identifies where we've been able to utilize those funds to develop significant components of the planned trail corridors through Baden and New Hamburg that were identified in the Trails Master Plan. Through the design work that was completed for the Sandhills Road Multi-Use Trail, primarily with respect to surveying, it was determined that we had a little less room to work with than anticipated, and as such the trail is required to be closer to the traveled portion of the road, which requires some engineering measures to improve safety for both users of the trail as well as vehicles on the road. Those costs have moved the estimates greater than what was originally anticipated, and as such we are recommending within this report that the additional funds within that Trails Trust Fund be utilized to fund that remaining portion that would be over and above the initial estimate of $380,000. although we may not utilize all of those funds, a significant portion is anticipated to be utilized through that ultimate construction of that project. With council's endorsement of the usage of those funds, staff would proceed to have a request for tender out for construction of this trail in 2021. Ultimately, if there were to be any funds remaining in the Trails Trust Fund after the completion of that project, they would be utilized to fund additional projects that are identified in the Trails Master Plan, and those are included within that recommendation. Staff are here to answer any questions, should there be any.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I was waiting to give other people a chance to, comment or question on this. Obviously, Andrew's done a phenomenal job of spearheading this and supporting this work. It's been fantastic. I just wanted to comment that recognizing this is a use of a huge chunk of the money that we have. I think that the use of the trail since before it was officially opened and the very enthusiastic use since it has been officially opened and people's comments to me from the public saying, they're really looking forward to being able to access those trails without having to go on the road or without having to drive because they're concerned about safety. That's why I think that it's a good use of the money in this case.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Yes, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Just a comment. It's really exciting to see all these trails coming into fruition. And one interesting story, I ran into an ex-co-worker from Zares. She's looking at a house in Morningside. So I said, "Oh, what brings you out here?" And she said her and her husband come out to Schmidt Woods every day and walk. And they want to get closer to Schmidt's Woods. And I thought that is such an amazing thing that they would, they like our trails so much. So anyway, I don't have any problem spending money on like this. I know people use the trails regularly and really enjoy them. So.
That they certainly do. Councillor Hall.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay, sorry, I had to switch headsets, so I wasn't sure if it was working. Thank you for the mayor. I almost forgot that I had a resident request me to read a statement. So I will do that. There are many of us seniors in Wilmot who have really enjoyed these trails. Our deepest thanks to that committee. It's important to us that our comment is not taken negatively. The new Sandhills Trail is significantly more challenging than the other trails in Wilmot. Many of us who've had hip replacements, knee replacements, or bad backs were caught off guard with how challenging this trail was. Can you please let the committee know that perhaps adding a sign that indicates the difficulty would be a welcomed addition to the trail? We are certainly enjoying it and enjoying nature that we haven't been able to in Wilmot before. So our thanks.
Very good, thank you. Well, we certainly want to thank the committee for all their hard work. And Mr. Martin, I know for several years now that you've been putting a lot of sweat into the trails, and we certainly appreciate all the extremely hard work that you have done, not only as a member of staff, but as a citizen that works very hard for our trails. So thank you very much. Okay, the recommendation that council endorse use of the remaining Trails Trust Fund and Scout Corporation donation for the completion of the Sand Hills Road multi-use trail, and further that the Trails Trust Fund be formally closed effective December 31st, 2020, in accordance with bylaw 2016-44, with any remaining funds at that time being allocated to a deferred revenue account for use on trail developments as referenced in report PFRS 2020-18. And that is moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item is the Wilmot Water Financial Plan. And Mr. Romney, you're up, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. In accordance with the Safe Drinking Water Act of 2002, it requires water distribution systems to be licensed by the province. And part of these licensing requirements, one of the components is to have a financial plan with a minimum period of 6 years. As noted in the report, next year is a re-accreditation year, requiring this plan to be approved. Additionally, in part of the annual update, as per past practice, we also do include the wastewater system component as well. The plan incorporates various factors such as capital expenditures noted in the 10-year capital plan. And if there are any questions, staff are here to answer any.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Mr. Romney? Seeing none, the recommendation that report COR 2020-038 regarding the Wilmot Township Water and Wastewater Financial Plan prepared by the Manager of Finance / Deputy Treasurer be approved. That is moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item is billboard sign renewals. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. Very briefly, an annual report just providing an update on the billboards that are currently licensed in the township, an opportunity for council, if there are concerns with any of those signage, to look at having those issues rectified. Through reviewing all of the signs this year, they do appear to all be in accordance with their approvals, and staff would recommend that all licenses be approved for another year.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, the recommendation that report DS 2020-027 be endorsed. Moved by Councillor Gerber and Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the next item is the drainage engineer's report. Oh, sorry. I must have missed it. Slipped over here. Thank you. Sorry. Fire department pickups. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. Through the chair, this report in front of council outlines the RFP process to undertake the purchase of 2 pickups, one being a replacement for a 10-year-old pickup, and the other is an addition to the fleet that was outlined in the 2012 Fire Master Plan report. The purchases were within budget, and the successful proponent was Barry Cullen Chevrolet Cadillac. And I'm here to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, and this is just me because I have no idea about cars and stuff like that. But looking on the back page, I'm just curious, the sale of the surplus, is that based, because it just says $1,000? And I'm just wondering, is that just based on like the black book or blue book value kind of thing? Or do we actually just sell it for $1,000? Just curious on that one. Thank you.
Chief, you wanted to answer that?
Through the chair, that is a suggested estimate of what the truck may receive during an auction. It'll go to auction, and we'll hope for that. If we get more, then then we're lucky. Yeah, it's an educated guess from our finance department.
Thank you. No further comments or questions. So the recommendation that RFP FD 2020-27 be awarded to Barry Cullen Chevrolet Cadillac Limited to supply and deliver two 2021 Chevrolet Silverado 2500 4x4 crew cab pickup trucks as per their proposal dated November 6, 2020, and the amount of $83,810 plus HST. So that is moved by Councillor Hallman, second by Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Now we're down to the drainage engineer's report. Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. The Glen Shantz Drain 2020 Engineers Report was received by Council on November 16th, 2020, and was subsequently sent to property owners within the watershed area and the appropriate agencies. Mr. Curtis McIntyre is here from K-Smart Associates to present his reports and answer questions from Council and the property owners within the watershed area. There are some property owners who have registered in advance. I'm not sure if they have specific questions or if they just wish to address Council on the matter. But after Mr. McIntyre has presented his report, they will be allowed to ask their questions or address Council.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre.
Hello, is everybody able to hear me?
Yes, welcome, Curtis.
And Sivy, hi. Thank you, Mayor Armstrong and members of council for this opportunity to present my report on the Glen Shantz Drain 2020. If whoever's running the host for the Zoom meeting, if we could bring up the watershed plan, I'll get started. Excellent, thank you. So this project got started with the filing of a petition under the Drainage Act, under Section 4 of the Drainage Act, by Mr. Gary Roth in June of 2019. His petition requested the construction of a new tile drain, which is labeled as Branch A at the bottom of the page, and as well as incorporation of an existing tile drain on his property, which is referred to as Branch B. Yeah, perfect. The watershed for the two branches, just to orientate everybody, is between Huron Road and Bean Road, and this is in the westerly corner of Ward 1. Punky Oodles Corners is up at the top left-hand corner of the page, just so everybody knows where we are in the township. Also, this watershed, the two branches for this watershed exist inside the watershed of the original Glen Shantz drain that was constructed in 1981. So the on-site meeting was held in November of 2019. At the meeting, we reviewed the surface water erosion problem that Mr. Roth has on his farm in the middle of his property, east to west, right around where Branch A is. We also reviewed the existing tile drain that was constructed in the late 1990s by Bruce Cook Drainage. That's Branch B area. And that was paid for at the time by Mr. Roth. The meeting was followed by survey and design through the winter and spring of 2020. When we completed our design, and breakdown of assessments, we held an information meeting with the watershed back in August of this year. And at that meeting, we presented our proposed work, and that is what is shown in this report. So this report by K-Smart recommends the installation of 712 meters of closed pipe drain designed to a 1-inch drainage coefficient standard, regular standard that we work with. That is branch A. So branch A consists of 450 millimeter concrete tile, that's 18-inch, that starts at Wilmot Creek at the bottom. It switches over to 400 millimeter tile and then 300 millimeter diameter tile as you get up to the eastern limits of the Roth property. Also, we at station 421, it's a little hard to see, but it's right in the middle of the page on branch A. We're proposing 25 meters, yeah, exactly right there. 25 meter long berm with a catch basin to try to catch the surface water, as much of the surface water as we can, so it doesn't keep eroding away across Mr. Roth's farm. Also at the top end of the drain on the eastern side, we were proposing another small berm there to catch it at the bush with the neighboring property. And the second recommendation out of this report is the incorporation of 176 meters of closed pipe drain that's already existing, referred to as branch B, and that's 300 millimeter diameter concrete tile. If we can just scroll down, a couple of pages. I don't think I really need to review all the rest of the, this is the profile. I won't bother spending any time talking about it. There's a lot of slope in this area. If we keep going down, these are details, more details for the work, and the next page is sections. And the following one is, I copied page 11 of the report. So just to get into the costs of the report, the estimate for the cost of construction is around $47,000. Approximately $7,600 will be provided in allowances. $3,100 of that are damages for crops for the construction of branch A, and $4,500 are what we call existing drain allowances. So those will be provided to Mr. Roth, and they equal the cost, like the bill from the late 1990s for the Bruce Cook drainage bill that was paid for by Mr. Roth. Finally, the total engineering estimate, which includes the writing of this report and construction supervision when we get doing the work, is approximately $28,000 for a total project cost of $86,500. At this meeting today, I won't get into exactly how assessments were broken out down into, but I'll just add that the township doesn't have any lands or roads assessed into this drain. It's just 7 agricultural properties. And at the end of my report, there is a Schedule A included, which is a schedule of assessments for the construction, Schedule B for future maintenance costs, and a Schedule C is also included for assuming that a 1/3 grant applies for all of these agricultural properties. So that's all I have to present on my report. I'd be happy to field any questions from council or assessed landowners at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. Anyone have any comments for Curtis at the moment, or do you want to just wait till the... Okay, so our next speaker is Mr. Roth. Welcome, Gary. Welcome, Gary. Can you hear us, Gary? Is it *6 he has to push? Yeah, Gary, we can't hear you. You have to try pushing *6.
Oh, no, he isn't.
You are muted. There we go. Try again, Gary. Speak and see if we can hear you.
Excuse me, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Mr. Roth, if we're unable to hear you, if you do have another manner in which that you're able to call in, we can add you as one of the delegations later on during this report consideration. Otherwise, if you have access to email, you are more than welcome to email that in to the deputy clerk, and she would be able to read your questions or comments if that is what you would like to do, but we were unable to hear you at this time.
Is it coming through now? Is it coming through now?
Yes, go ahead, Gary. You're here.
Oh, good. Yeah, Gary Roth, and I'm pleased so far with the report and ready to hear what other people have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Our next speaker is Victoria Lass.
Excuse me, Mayor Armstrong. She is not in the queue waiting.
Thank you. Then we'll go to the next, Gloria Richardson.
I don't have any questions at this time, and I approve of the report.
Thanks, Gloria. So there are no questions from delegations, or is there any comments or questions from staff? Or not staff, but from council? Seeing none. And I will read the recommendation. Recommendation that the drainage engineer's report dated October 21st, 2020 for the Glenshot's Drain 2020 requiring drainage involving the installation of closed pipe drain for branch A and incorporation of closed pipe drain for branch B for south part of lot 28 and 29, concession 2, block A, Township of Wilmot, Region Municipality of Waterloo be adopted, and further that the provisional bylaw be given first and second reading, and further that the date of the court of revision be scheduled for Monday, January 11th, 2021 at 7 p.m. and that Mayor Armstrong and councillors A. Hallman, C. Cordick, and J. Gerber as alternate member be appointed to the court of revision. That is moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Hallman. Any further comments? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item is the award of contract for Prime Minister's Path consultation. Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. As directed by Council on July 27th, 2020, staff began the process of retaining the services of an Indigenous consultant to facilitate consultations concerning the Prime Minister's Path and the Sir John A. Macdonald statue. The RFP process was initiated under the guidance and assistance of Mr. Kelly and Ms. Kutnick of the Corporate Services Department. Thank you very much to both of them for their assistance. The RFP deadline was extended to accommodate additional plan takers and bidders, but despite there being 2 plan takers, no bids were received. Under the procurement bylaw, staff may undertake negotiations with 1 or more potential bidders where no bids have been received. Staff entered into negotiations with First Peoples Group, one of the plan takers. A proposal was received and reviewed by the RFP Selection Committee, which consisted of Councillors Fisher and Fenning, along with the Director of Corporate Services and myself. All members of the Selection Committee were satisfied with the proposal and endorsed recommending First Peoples Group to Council. Due to timing matters, First Peoples will not be able to meet the March 1st, 2021 deadline that was included in the July 27th, 2020 resolution. An extension is being sought to July 31st, 2021. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Middleholtz. Councillor Hallman.
Here we go through the mayor. This demonstrates our unified commitment to democracy, the calls to truth and reconciliation, and ensures that the Township of Wilmot stands with all peoples who have and continue to experience oppression and marginalization. This commitment and step forward demonstrates our dedication to fostering compassion, empathy, and willingness to begin to rectify past wrongs and continue moving Wilmot down a path of reconciliation. I'm thankful for the committee's work, and I'm voting yes on this recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I want to commend staff for helping us to move this forward in spite of the challenges. And thank you. Thank you for excellent work.
Thank you. There are no further comments or questions. The recommendation that the award of contract to National FPG Inc. First Peoples Group for the Prime Minister's past stakeholder consultation for the upset limit of $45,000 plus HST be approved, and further that funding for these works be included in the 2021 capital budget and 10-year capital forecast, and further that the March 1st, 2021 deadline approved by Council on July 27, 2020 for the presentation of the consultation's recommendations in resolution number 2020-104 be extended to July 31st, 2021. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fisher. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I would now call on Councillor Fisher as acting mayor for the month of December to assume the role of chair for the next portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. So we have a recommendation in front of us, and the recommendation is that the report prepared by the Integrity Commissioner be received and that Council pass a subsequent resolution regarding the recommendations contained within the report. I'll now ask the Director of Information and Legislative Services to highlight the report number ILS 2020-39.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Fisher. The Integrity Commissioner report was filed on November 27th. Staff is recommending that the report be received and a subsequent resolution be passed concerning the recommendations contained within the report. The Integrity Commissioner is an independent third party with legislated authorities under the Municipal Act. Dr. Robert Williams, I believe, is in attendance. Let me confirm, to answer questions or to provide procedural or to provide clarity or process advice. Council and staff have received letters that were requested to be included as part of the public record and have been posted in the meeting detail section of this meeting on the township calendar on the website. They will also be included in the minutes as an appendices.
Thank you. We have some delegations tonight, but before commencing with hearing from delegations, I would like to remind all the delegations of some guidelines for participation. Please leave your video camera turned off and your microphone audio muted until you're called upon to speak. Delegations will be allotted 10 minutes to speak and will be provided a 2-minute warning reminder when your 10 minutes is nearing completion. We also ask that you leave the meeting once your issue has been addressed. You are then welcome to watch the remainder of the meeting being webcast live via YouTube. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate muting and removal from the meeting. And those are interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, and hate speech or defamatory comments. So I will now call upon the delegations as they have been registered. And first up would be Nigel Gordick. Welcome, Nigel. I think you're muted there, Nigel. There we go.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. On Friday, June 26th, I was here delegating at the special council meeting a few days after Mayor Armstrong shared an offensive video that contained racist conspiracy theories and falsehoods that had been debunked. In the intervening days between the mayor's actions and my presentation, he stood firm and unapologetic in the belief that he had done nothing wrong. Finally, after pressure from his regional and township colleagues, he read a prepared statement, which, to me, lacked authenticity because it failed to demonstrate that he understood why his actions had caused harm. My presentation lasted just 5 minutes. It's the first time I'd ever felt compelled to address racism head on, and it left me feeling drained and shaken. I have no idea how people who are Black or Indigenous or people of color find the words, let alone the strength, to do this over and over again. What helped me over the next days and weeks were the words of support that I received, many from my fellow township residents. Some people contacted me months later because that's how long it took them to find the appropriate words. More than 30 people emailed me, commented when I posted video of my presentation online, sent me private messages on social media, or phoned me. There are 2 phone calls in particular, excuse me, that I'd like to highlight. I'm married to one township councillor, excuse me, and I'm friends with 2 others. While I wasn't expecting vocal support from any of the remaining councillors, that's only because we don't share a close personal relationship. So I was surprised and incredibly moved to hear from Councillor Barry Fisher, who phoned me a few days after my presentation. He recognised that I was in pain and he called to check on how I was doing. Councillor Fisher, I can't thank you enough for your kind, compassionate words. They meant the world to me back then, and I can tell you that they helped me through a difficult period. The second phone call I'd like to talk about came on the morning of Saturday, June 27th, 24 hours after my delegation. It was from a former Region of Waterloo councillor. They've given me permission to discuss our conversation, and I promised not to identify them publicly. However, Mayor Armstrong knows who I'm talking about and can confirm that this actually took place. This former councillor told me that they had spoken with the mayor in a commendable effort to find a way forward for Wilmot. The councillor had suggested that the mayor reach out to at least some of the people who had spoken at the special council meeting the previous day and have one-on-one conversations with them. That would enable the mayor to offer personal and meaningful apologies that addressed each person's issues. The regional councillor told me that Mayor Armstrong had agreed to the proposal, so the councillor asked if I would be willing to have that conversation, and I said that I would. And so I waited, and then I waited. Over the years, Mayor Armstrong and I have exchanged numerous emails on various topics. We've had direct conversations via Twitter. We've spoken with each other on the phone. Les Armstrong has been a guest in my home. There were numerous ways that the mayor could have contacted me if he'd wanted to, but I'm still waiting. It's been 164 days, and I think it's safe to assume that he's lost interest in speaking with me. However, I am still available. The Integrity Commissioner found that both the mayor's initial action and his subsequent apology violated the codes of conduct of both the Region of Waterloo and the Township of Wilmot for a total of 4 code violations. And yet, the IC's report, which clearly describes what the mayor was guilty of and offers condemnation, does not recommend any action. Instead, what the report does suggest is that both councils should direct the mayor, quote, to present a truthful, honest, and sincere apology. If councillors are being told to order the mayor to apologise for what he did, how can that apology be regarded as truthful, honest, or sincere, rather than coerced? Over the past few days, I've gone back and forth in my mind about the tone of the presentation I wanted to give this evening. My first thought was simply to vent my frustration. But then I tried to move towards something that would be more positive, something that would heal. I have to admit, I found that challenging. We're living in a municipality where the mayor shared a racist message and didn't understand why that might be harmful. His first incomplete apology failed to mend that division. When residents came before him and told him how his actions had affected them, and, like me, also presented him with an opportunity to respond directly, he hasn't done so. I hope he will still consider it. The Integrity Commissioner, who investigated official complaints from members of the public, found the mayor guilty of 4 code of conduct violations across 2 municipalities, but has chosen to take no action despite having numerous options available to him. Bearing in mind that there are Black people and people of colour who work at the Township of Wilmot, I feel that the harassment complaint should have warranted more attention. Recently, Bernice King, the daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., said this: "Kindness matters, but kindness does not equal justice. Civility counts, but calling for civility is not the humane response to injustice. Justice is. Love is essential, but love is not a passive weeping bystander. Love puts in work." Councillors, it's up to you now. What work will you do to help us move forward? How will you use this situation to show our community that elected officials have a duty to maintain certain standards of behaviour, and that there will be meaningful action when those standards aren't met? This isn't about Mayor Armstrong. This is about all of you who currently sit on council and everyone who will come afterwards. What should we expect of you? The township's vision is described in its recently updated master plan as a cohesive, vibrant, and welcoming countryside community. On Friday, Councillor Gornak and I had the pleasure of meeting a woman who has just started working in Wilmot. She commutes from Cambridge and she wants to move to the township. She said to us, "I'd like to live here with my family, but my children are brown. Would they be welcome?" Given the events of the past few months, what do you think is the truthful, honest, and sincere response? Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. Does any of the councillors have a comments or questions for Nigel? Seeing none. Thank you, Nigel. Next up, we have John Bailey. Welcome, John.
Good evening. First of all, I would like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak this evening. We've been brought here together over our mutual concern about the conduct of our mayor, Les Armstrong, and the findings of the Integrity Commissioner based on his examination of Mr. Armstrong's words and actions with regard to his posting of a White Lives Matter video and his subsequent media defense of this, and then his conduct ignoring the presentation and instead speaking to staff while a delegation, a person of color, was speaking about the hurtful impact of this conduct. With 7 complaints filed, resulting in 4 code of conduct violations, it's clear that the mayor's conduct was unbecoming of a public official and also clearly a national embarrassment for our township and for Waterloo Region. What is also painfully clear is that the findings of the Integrity Commissioner, after a lengthy and thorough examination, led to a recommendation of a punitive action of nothing more than requiring an apology. While many of us are aghast at the dismissive nature of this report, it's clear that the system, a white male Integrity Commissioner investigating a white male mayor, recommending a wrist slap, is working exactly as intended, a system set up by white men which seems to serve white men. The appearance of having an investigative body that examines code of conduct violations is designed to satisfy the taxpayers that there is some measure of oversight that keeps our public figures held to a high level of professional accountability. In reality, though, this system has little in the way of teeth, and this outcome is almost assured given the current framework. It's clear that every single one of the faces you see on your screen this evening, with the obvious exception of the mayor, was absolutely horrified by what occurred, and even further, by the doubling down and tripling down on it in the media, until eventually being pressured to take down the posting and read a wooden, narrowly focused stock apology, an apology that the Integrity Commissioner has found to be insufficient and contravene the Code of Conduct. And it's very likely that every single person you see here this evening would likely have the critical thinking skills to identify the obvious clickbait nature of the video, the lies and disinformation, and the fact that the video appealed to all of the biases held by individuals that might share the video. Whether it's a chain email from a Nigerian prince, a phone call with a CRA scam, a bank account phishing email, or the unrelenting robocalls from duct cleaning services, etc., living in the 21st century requires a constant vigilance and critical thinking about everything you see, everything you read, and more importantly, everything you share online. Are we surprised that this happened to our mayor? An otherwise very well loved and respected individual in our community? Not really. The real failure here was that Mr. Armstrong likely didn't critically examine the source of this information, didn't question the outlandish and false statistics being quoted, and unfortunately had allowed his confirmation bias to accept this video as a truth and to post it as what he thought was a valid discussion point. Unfortunately, there is no critical thinking commissioner in Wilmot Township. We rely on the municipal election process for residents of this township to endorse the candidate they believe has the intellect, the wisdom, compassion, and critical thinking skills to lead council. While it's clear at this point that Mr. Armstrong has likely lost a significant amount of support in this community, it's also very likely that he may not run again, and Wilmot will have its opportunity to choose somebody else. I'm sure everyone can agree that we all hope that Les Armstrong will continue to reside in Wilmot Township and enjoy a retirement with dignity here in this community. What this ordeal has really invited us to is the reality that Wilmot Township has been forced to deal with a very difficult, ugly, and painful truth that the old white way here is glaringly unacceptable. This community is changing rapidly and will continue to change over the next few years. The absence of wisdom and critical thinking that you've seen here has also led us into a contentious statute project that was rammed through council without public input and has now blown up into another national embarrassment for Wilmot Township. What was supposed to have been a zero cost to taxpayers project has become a six figures and counting behemoth and still lacks a thorough and complete educational component. What's worse is that the legal agreement entered into by Wilmot Township, likely without legal counsel, is so weak that either party can give notice and walk away from the deal. I'm not sure that anyone considered that at one statue per year, 23 years of statues would see almost all of the retirees that are involved in the project well into ill health and beyond. And certainly nothing is stopping Createscape Waterloo Region from throwing in the towel, walking away from the project with only 60 days notice, leaving us with a partially complete Prime Minister's path that continues to draw criticism from Wilmot residents and Indigenous peoples and a contentious mess to clean up. This again leads us to the gift that keeps on giving. It is for our community to accept the invitation to dig deeper and to begin constructive and healthy dialogue on what can be done to heal the wounds that this ordeal has exposed. It's clear that there are some individuals in this community that harbor some very hurtful and destructive views, as expressed in the posting of hateful posters in New Hamburg, by the graffiti we've seen in the parks, and the presence of a white supremacist group at the S-Jam statue in Baden. It's clear that we have much work to do in our families, in our schools, in our places of worship, and in our service clubs to teach and model lives of acceptance, embracing cultures, and expanding our worldview, but beyond its current status quo. We need to encourage each other in this community to live into a greater integrity and authenticity, and to challenge situations where we see systemic bias, where we hear dialogue that is hurtful or racist, we need to make it easier to speak up than to remain silent. More importantly, we need to examine ourselves. We are the system. Are we equally as vulnerable as Mr. Armstrong to being drawn into content, thoughts, ideas, and disinformation that speaks to our own biases? Absolutely. It's happening every single day of our lives. And the assumptions, privileges, and opportunities that we expect every day are often not available to people in our own community who may be Black, Indigenous, persons of color, or who identify in a way that's different from us. Even though most of the Wilmot staff people you see on this screen this evening were likely horrified by what has occurred, they are powerless, or at least feel powerless, to have immediately and publicly spoken out, fearing for their jobs and exercising extreme caution in filing human resources complaints for fear of reprisal. The councillors you see this evening are being held to the very same code of conduct and must be extremely careful about how their own reactions are received, and must rely on the system, the complaint-driven system you see at work here this evening, the very system that has reduced 4 very serious contraventions of the code of conduct to a recently published apology. This week, while it's clear that Mr. Armstrong has enjoyed some support, it's obvious that this community is divided, and many do not understand, or may not have attempted to understand, the seriousness of the findings in the Integrity Commissioner's report. In section 53 of Mr. Williams' report, he refers to the healing and collective learning about what it means to be a member of a racial minority in Canada in 2020, and what must be done to overcome the way the community has fallen short of understanding that reality. We are invited to be part of the change, part of the solution, and I encourage everyone this evening to ask the people around you what you can do to help change the direction of this community. We have an opportunity to address the chasm that has been exposed and to embark on meaningful dialogue. I urge you to accept the invitation into this process and to leave behind the hurtful legacy of this ordeal and replace it with positive change and genuine effort. While Council considers the report before them from the Integrity Commissioner and its paradox between crystal clear contraventions of the Code of Conduct and its only punitive measure being an apology, I urge councillors to consider a further motion to impose the maximum penalty available. Further, I must remind Council that if you do vote to approve this report and its findings that Mr. Williams states in section 48, I caution though that any further contraventions of the codes by the member could result in more severe consequences. Clearly, by voting to accept this report, you are committing to section 48. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Does any councillors have comments or questions for John? Nope. Okay. Thanks again, John. Next up is David Atkinson. Welcome, Dave.
Okay, hi. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can, Dave.
Okay, great. Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fisher, nice to see you after a previous interaction that we've had in our previous lives. Thank you, Mayor Armstrong and Council. The reputation of this community has been severely damaged over the past 6 to 9 months. We have received more media attention in 2020 than in the 30+ years that I've lived here, and none of it has been good. None of it has been showcasing the real Wilmot, where people pull together to get things done, respect each other, and live in good neighborly fashion. Unfortunately, the actions of individuals on council have not only added to that negative image, they have also failed to defend this community when others have taken swipes at it. There's a well-known Facebook group which has been used to anonymously refer to members of this community, both individually and corporately, in many unflattering terms that should never be used loosely and which are the complete opposite of everything I've experienced while living here. Perhaps most interestingly, 3 members of council are prominent members on that group's front page. And to the best of my knowledge, none have come to the defense of either the council or the community, either on that page or via other outlets. When allegations of racism white supremacy, etc., have been made against the community that you represent, you are duty bound to speak out in defense. If you do not, you are giving tacit approval to these comments. It is not too much to ask to be assured that no elected members of Township Council actually believe Wilmot residents are racist or white supremacists. Which brings me to the issue I'd like to primarily address, the issue of the mayor's social media post. Mayor Armstrong has apologized already for this post, twice. And now the Integrity Commissioner is recommending yet another apology in written and oral form. I don't know how a third apology is expected to change anything. The recommendations make no demand on the mayor that have not been previously placed on him by council, and with which he has already complied. Unless someone on council believes they can assess the mayor's inner thoughts and feelings to confirm that this apology is any more genuine than the previous two have been, this seems to me to be meant as nothing more than additional embarrassment for the mayor. In reading the commissioner's report, I found section 42 quite interesting, where he talks about councillors being respectful while residents are presenting to council. Assuming that the findings of this report are meant to be equally applied to the conduct of all council members, and I'm joining in agreement with Mr. Bailey on this one, I would suggest that all of the councillors need to pay attention to this. We've all seen councillors paying no attention to presentations over the last few months. I recall being appalled at the lack of interest as I've watched other meetings. Not only have council been uninterested when well-meaning, civic-minded residents have made the effort to prepare and present to council, not even one said he or she was not interested. Sorry, one even said he or she was not even interested in hearing any more from residents on a particularly thorny recent issue. I find that unacceptable. It is my intent to support the mayor, who I believe has been unfairly browbeaten and bullied by council and others in the community on this issue. 2 apologies and a commitment to continue to learn more about these issues should put this to rest completely. People outside of Wilmot agree. In today's Kitchener Today reporting, there are many comments that basically boil down to this: put this behind you and get on with business. If we want to begin healing our community and healing our community's reputation, this is what we must do. And I don't believe I have ever agreed with Lisa D'Amato on her reporting, but today I'm going to make an exception. Today, in an article that she wrote in the Waterloo Region Record, after reviewing this event from start to finish, she ends with this: perhaps Wilmot Township has a bigger problem than the inappropriate actions of its now chastened mayor. Perhaps we do. Is council going to continue to be the problem, or are you going to put the good of your constituents, the residents of Wilmot, ahead of real and or perceived grievances? Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Does any councillor have a question or comment for Dave? Seeing none. Thanks again, Dave.
Thank you.
So may I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation from report number ILS 2020-39? Councillor Gerber and Councillor Fenning. All in favor?
Excuse me, Chair Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, an opportunity for questions or comments prior to voting on the motion.
Okay. Maybe what we'll do, we'll have Mayor Armstrong. Do you wish to address council first?
I think the clerk wishes to make a comment first.
If I may, through you, Chair Fisher, I just wanted to clarify for council, the passage of the recommendation contained within report ILS 2020-39 is to receive the report only. It's not agreeing with the report. It is not agreeing with the recommendations in the report. It is just to receive the report, and that a subsequent recommendation would come forward to deal with the actual recommendations within the report. I just wanted to make that clarification. Thank you.
Okay, so once again, all in favor to receive the report? And that is carried. Okay, one more time to Mayor Armstrong. Do you wish to address council on this matter?
My comments are that I accept the Integrity Commission's report and that I stand by my comments that I made on in my statement on Friday. And that's all I have to say.
So, Dawn, just a quick question for you. You're indicating at this point is there a member of council who wishes to make a motion concerning the recommendations?
Yes, through you, Chair Fisher. At this point in time, it would be appropriate if there is a member of council who wants to make a motion. Usually debate on the floor is about a specific motion, so therefore a motion should be the next step in bringing this forward.
Okay, and then the clerk would type a motion on the screen for everyone to read. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through Chair Fisher. I was under the impression that the Integrity Commissioner was available. I just was hoping that maybe the Integrity Commissioner had some comments about their recommendation, before we debate that this evening.
Okay, is that appropriate, Dawn?
Through you, Chair Fisher. The Integrity Commissioner's role here this evening is to provide clarity as well as comment on process. That is what his role is here this evening. His report stands for itself, and this is one of those situations where, once again, either council is going to agree with the recommendations within it, or they will not recommend or not be in agreement with the recommendations within it. He can provide, as I said, clarity as well as process. So if there are direct questions that you may have of the Integrity Commissioner, I'm sure he'd be more than welcome to answer those questions for you.
Okay, Councillor Hallman, did you want to ask him a question?
Thank you, Chair Fisher. Yes, please.
Okay. You can go ahead.
Sorry, through the mayor, through the chair. I wasn't sure how long it took him to get available. So good evening, Mr. Williams.
Good evening. Good evening, Councillor.
I just wanted to take the opportunity for you to clarify some details that had been brought to my attention that perhaps you could just briefly touch on clarifying the complaint process for the public, as I think there's some details that are that the public doesn't understand.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. The process that we followed is basically laid out in the legislation and supplemented by the Code of Conduct for the township, which has some parameters around how the process works. Complaints can be filed. They are filed through the clerk's office, but come to me anonymously. I do not share the names of any of the complainants with any other complainant or with the media or staff or anyone else. Those are submissions made in confidence and working under the Act. They are maintained in secrecy, which sounds a bit dramatic, but it's really a confidential process that I followed in this exercise. The complaints that I received, as I pointed out in the report, 3 of them came from residents of Wilmot Township. 1 came through the regional code. That individual is not a resident of Wilmot. These were all submissions filed by residents. These were not filed by staff or council or any other officials. They were done by members of the public in response to the issues that they wish to raise. And just to be clear, this is, in 10 years, this is the first case we've actually had to deal with that's gone to a review of this sort. So we're all in new territory, if I can put it that way. It's a process that was complicated because it involved both the regional code and the township code. It involved residents applying under different codes, and it involved multiple applications. So it was not one petitioner on one point. So it was a fairly complicated process to follow. And the result is what I presented to council in this report.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. And just a follow-up question. If you can perhaps just clarify the, I think there's members of the community, again, who aren't aware of the limitations that we live under as elected officials and you as obviously the making recommendations. So if you could just briefly touch on that as well, I think that would be greatly appreciated.
Right, I'm happy to do that. There were a number of people who contacted me early on who were seeking very dramatic sanctions. But as I've made very clear in the report, there are only two options that are open to me. One is a reprimand, and the other is the suspension of salary for up to 90 days. From my point of view, that is the most extreme version of a sanction. It's not one that one would necessarily enter into easily as the only sanction to use. So there are a lot of other things people raised with me, and I discussed with some of the petitioners other ideas that they had, and quite frankly, they are simply not available as, if you will, sanctions. What is important, and I wish to comment a little bit on some of the observations already made, these are directed toward what I would consider trying to be remedial measures. And the code itself is really trying to frame around issues of that side. How do we want people to behave on council and beyond that? So the framing of this report was around trying to find some of those remedial actions that I felt were appropriate in the circumstance.
Thank you for answering my question, Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Councillor Gerber, you had a question or comment?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair Fisher, to Mr. Williams. Just a couple of questions for you this evening. My first one would be your report recommendation for an apology from the mayor. Does the statement that he released on Friday, I'm not asking you to judge the statement, but does the manner in which it was released satisfy the criteria for that particular recommendation over the report? Or would there have been an expectation by you that that apology also be read into the public record at an open council meeting? I was curious about how that would actually occur.
The original intent is more along the second line because the report, I mean, frankly, I haven't read it. It was never sent to me, so I don't know what's in it. I'd have to rely on the media to do that. So I would have expected that part of the scenario would be that would be read into the record. Granted, that takes some organization to make it happen in terms of releasing it, but I have no judgment on the content at all, and that's not part of what I was looking for. How that was delivered was left open, I grant you, and that is presumably up to Mayor Armstrong to determine, and by extension for council to basically agree or not that met the expectation.
So just as a follow-up to that, so it might be appropriate for us to perhaps give Mayor Armstrong a moment to perhaps search his files, assuming that he might be able to find it readily to read it into the public record. I would personally would like to see that. And I just wanted to follow up on a couple other things, Mr. Williams. You had mentioned the sanction, one of the sanctions that you can recommend is a reprimand. Would you consider what your findings of the report or council statements of condemnation for the mayor's comments that we passed in June? Would you consider those to be reprimands, or is a reprimand something further or something that has not been done?
I basically treated that resolution back in June as equivalent to what might have happened at this stage. In a sense, it was already done. You took your own action. Granted, it was done, if you will, spontaneously, but it was intended, I think, along the lines of how I interpret the municipal act in this regard. It was basically saying we would like certain things to happen because we did not accept a certain behavior. And I see that as certainly parallel to that, which is why I did not recommend another statement of that sort. There is a process underway that will last a period of time. And I felt from that point of view, it met the spirit. It was a part of the remedial measure that might have been appropriate now that had already taken place. So that's one of the reasons why I did not look for another statement of that sort from council, but rather an apology rather in relation to the secondary concern that was in the report.
Thank you. And then just as a follow-up to that, and then further to that, council's actions requiring the mayor to report quarterly on actions that he has taken to increase his awareness of the problem with the post, the problem with the apology, systemic racism, etc. Again, that would be sort of beyond what you would be in your scope to call for, but something that you endorse as far as what we've already done on council and something you think is appropriate to continue, I believe you said throughout the rest of this term. Is that correct?
Well, I make that suggestion in the report, and let's be clear that these are recommendations. Yes. I'm not imposing those sanctions. It's up to council to decide how to follow that up, but they are a form of remedial action, which I think is consistent with what can happen. Council can step beyond or not step as far as the recommendation. That's open to you within the parameters of the law. And that's where I tried to keep this discussion, and primarily on the reprimand remedial side rather than some kind of financial penalty.
Thank you.
And by the way, just sorry if I may, Chair Fisher, the idea of an apology on the record, I believe I suggested up to 60 days. So that doesn't have to happen right now necessarily. If Mayor Armstrong is prepared to do that, that's fine. But I didn't expect that would necessarily happen right on the spot.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Armstrong, did you want to read that? Your apology?
Yes, Chair Fisher, I can do that. The past number of months have been a period of great reflection for me. As I've reflected, I see that this is a road we're on together as a community, as a township, and as a region. I want to take this opportunity to apologize to those in our community, specifically the Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our community, of whom my action, specifically my action of posting a controversial and offensive video on social media, have hurt. I am deeply sorry for the pain my actions have caused each of you and our community as a whole. As I stated in June, I don't expect forgiveness based on my words alone. I committed to showing the community that you can count on me to continue fighting hard for everyone through my actions and leadership. I reflected on my time growing up in Waterloo region when my parents made sure my 4 siblings and I respected all members of the community, no matter who they were or where they came from. I've reflected on my white privilege, and I'm aware that I haven't had to suffer the kind of discrimination that others in our community have suffered. This summer, for the first time in our township's history, Wilmot Council unanimously passed a motion to fly the pride flag at our facilities. I'm glad that this will now be a yearly occurrence. I attended the ceremony in July, and for me, it represented Wilmot as a community that is open and accepting and on a progressive road to change. The Township of Wilmot recently approved the updated strategic plan. This is very important. This is a very important step forward as it identifies the principles for what we stand for and sets out a roadmap for the future. One of the pillars of the strategic plan recognizes that we are a caring and diverse community. As the mayor and as a leader in our community, I'm proud of this plan and look forward to its implementation. At the region of Waterloo, we are also moving towards a more inclusive approach. As a member of regional council, I'm proud of the work that we're doing and proud of the direction we are moving towards. A few weeks back, our anti-racism advisory working group was formed. This group will play a significant role in helping eliminate systemic racism at the region of Waterloo by providing recommendations, advice, and information to regional council. I look forward to working with that group and as a leader in Waterloo region. I am committed to ensuring we are a caring, accepting, and inclusive community for all. Brighter days ahead. Together we will focus on making the changes necessary to improve our community for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. Councillor Gerber, you had another comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair Fisher. I just wanted to first of all thank Mayor Armstrong for that apology and for reading it into the public record this evening. I also want to thank all who have spoke from June till tonight and who have illustrated the gulf within our community and as well as speaking for the hope for restoration and healing. I would point out that our actions and responses to the mayor's post and his initial apology as a council have already gone beyond what the Integrity Commissioner now recommends. And I would suggest that more than any further financial penalties that we could impose on the member, something concrete we can do as a further step towards showing the township's commitment to racial equality and working to ending systemic racism is to find a way to bring the voices of the Black, Indigenous, and people of color community to the table permanently, not do something temporary like sanctioning the mayor further tonight. I would suggest a BIPOC Community Relations Committee, a standing committee of council akin to Sustainability Committee or the Trails Committee, consisting of council and staff reps, but more importantly, representation from the Wilmot BIPOC community that would meet quarterly and provide a direct voice for the BIPOC community into the municipal affairs of Wilmot. And akin to other township communities like the Committee of Adjustments and the Dog Control Committee, for example, that the BIPOC members of the committee would receive honorariums for their meeting attendance and participation. And if it be the will of council to proceed on that idea, I would certainly look into crafting it in a more meaningful direction to staff so that staff could work on establishing the parameters for such a new committee of council, the Black, Indigenous, Person of Color Community Relations Committee.
Thank you. So we're still looking for a motion, member of council to make a motion concerning the recommendations from the Integrity Board. Would that be considered a motion, Ms. Middleholtz?
Yeah, through you, Chair Fisher. I'm sorry, Dawn. Sorry, Ms. Middleholtz, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Through you, Chair Fisher. I was actually writing down what Councillor Gerber was saying, and I missed part of what you were saying. My apologies. However, I do believe that there are some other conversations going on about the actual discussion points that might be wanting to be expressed to do with the recommendations within the report itself.
Okay, sorry for interrupting you. So we'll allow every councillor to make a presentation first before we move forward?
Through you, Chair Fisher, certainly that is an option. If through that there's recommendations that council is suggesting, I will make note of that. If they're saying that the recommendations within the report are acceptable and satisfactory to them, I've already prepared something along those lines. And then we can go from there. It's going to be very much like what we did earlier with the amendment. And I will probably need a recess at some point in time to make sure it all fits together properly.
Okay. So what I'm going to do then first, I am going to make a statement, and I'll begin, and then in turn we can take turns discussing. Mine is, I have known Les Armstrong for 30 plus years. I have always thought of him as a warm, caring, and approachable person who is dedicated to the community. He has spent many years as a local police officer, a businessman in Wilmot Township. This year, Les is in his 25th year in Wilmot Township politics, 15 years as a councillor and 10 years as a mayor. Over that time, his love for this township and his leadership is strikingly apparent. In the 10 years I've served as a councillor with him as mayor, I've never seen him to take a holiday. He has made himself available to the public 24/7. It doesn't matter how big or small of an event that's held in Wilmot Township or the region, he was always there supporting the cause. Over his time as councillor and mayor, with the help of fantastic staff at the township, he has fashioned this township into a great place to live. He's played a major role in shaping Wilmot Township, all with having the lowest annual tax increases in the region and remaining debt-free. Maclean magazine showed Wilmot Township as the 20th best place to Canada to live, another credit to his leadership. There is no question that his sharing of a Facebook post hurt a lot of people in Wilmot Township and the greater area, particularly for people of color. He has also caused a great deal of stress for township staff and us councillors. Let me make it clear that I do not condone what he did, and I think it was wrong. I truly believe the mayor did not intend to hurt people with that post, but it was a major error of a judgment on his part. We are all humans, and we have all done things that we've regretted, and knowing him personally, I know he had a lot of regrets on his action. He has claimed that he doesn't believe that people will forgive him by his words alone, but his actions will speak for him. He has made a public apology at Waterloo Council and to Wilmot Council. He held a special Friday morning Zoom meeting where people expressed their anger towards him. He has read countless books and articles, partaken in many webinars and courses trying to educate himself on Black Lives Matters. Last week, he apologized again, and tonight, as suggested by the Township Integrity Commissioner. To me, it is appropriate to accept the Integrity Commissioner's recommendations and have him continually with his quarterly reports until the end of the term. I believe that we should accept his apology and the Integrity Commissioner's report and move forward to serve the citizens of Wilmot Township. I'm not sure who put their hand up first, so I'm just going to go from the top. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Fisher. It should come as no surprise to anyone viewing tonight that the decision before us is a very difficult one. As council, we are asked to impose sanction or forgive a member who has been found in breach of our code of conduct. Those who were hurt by the member's action have called for his resignation, or at the very least, the maximum penalty available under the Municipal Act. Those who support him politically and were not part of the groups addressed in the content he shared see him as a victim of persecution at the hands of political opponents and irrationally angry people. I would like a couple of things straight. At no time have I said or done anything that could be reasonably construed as an attack against the mayor, despite goading from people who claim otherwise. I also do not hide authorship of my commentary behind anonymous social media groups. The complaints filed with the Integrity Commissioner, as Mr. Williams stated, did not come from me or any of my family members. My not having filed a complaint should not be taken as an endorsement of the mayor's actions in this case. I think that's something that everybody is hopefully well aware of. The media content shared by the mayor is no different than denying the Holocaust. It seeks to create validity for a counterpoint to the demand for racial justice put forward in the Black Lives Matter uprising. I think that word is appropriate in this. Black Lives Matter is a rising up and demand for justice. We should all be heeding that call. We should be using the sacred trust we are given as elected leaders to empower and unite. As leaders, every time we communicate, we are choosing whether to build up or tear down. And thinking on that is what has been the source of my comments tonight. In other jurisdictions, we've seen the destructive impact of this kind of content, and in fact, the page where the post originated is a prime example of the toxic vitriol and half-truths that are tearing apart so many communities. The Integrity Commissioner has correctly identified that we as council are not the offended party in this breach of the code. Rather, it is the people of color, both here in our community and indeed the world, whose dignity has been offended by that media content and sharing of it. People who are not part of the groups offended by this have reached out to ask all of council to accept the apologies and forgive him. No person who has asked us to forgive is part of any group whose racial identity is maligned by this post. Self-evident that I'm not Black, nor in any way a person of color, and therefore I lack the true authority to forgive this offense. No person of color has reached out to me to ask that I forgive as elected representative on their behalf. When this incident occurred and in the first days following it, I held on to my belief that the mayor, a man I have known to be capable of deep empathy and compassion, had unwittingly blundered. And I stand by that. I don't believe that our mayor intended harm. I don't believe that he thinks ill of any member of any racial group. The ensuing turmoil in our community has put people I love at risk. Across the region, we've seen multiple instances of racist propaganda being posted. This is a direct result of the failure to unequivocally condemn racist propaganda and ideology at all levels of government. It's not enough for most of us to condemn it. Each one of us must clearly, calmly, and firmly denounce racism in all forms. Being nice to people isn't enough. Treating people of color with dignity and respect on an individual basis is not enough. We must lead. We must lead by making it clear that there is no place for racist language, behavior, or media content in our community or anywhere in the world. All of us, unequivocally. If we allow even one hint of possibility that a racist message will be viewed as interesting, we open the door for malignancy of white supremacy and all other forms of racism. It cannot be allowed to find fertile ground in our minds, nor in our community. The question of what to do about the hurt that this has caused is very difficult to deal with. We have the Integrity Commissioner's recommendation. And ultimately, as he pointed out, the Act is quite limiting. And I'm just going to read for a moment directly the language in the Act. Municipal Act 223.4, Section 5. The municipality may impose either of the following penalties on a member of council or of a local board if the commissioner reports to the municipality that, in his or her opinion, the member has contravened the code of conduct, a reprimand, or a suspension of the remuneration paid to the member in respect of his or her services as a member of council or of the local board, as the case may be, for a period of up to 90 days. That is the sum total of guidance that the Act offers us. I've been weighing the options in this, and I'm finding that there are none that appear adequate or even appropriate to my mind. When the mayor was first told that his post was offensive and hurtful, he defended it. That is perhaps a common response for most of us who believe ourselves to be good. I remember reading about child psychology when my children were young, and them saying that children will lie about misdeeds because they simply cannot reconcile the idea of a misdeed with themselves as a good person. And I think that we don't really outgrow that. None of us want to believe that we, being good people, are guilty. And so because we meant no harm, there should be no blame assigned to us for the hurt that someone feels. But that still doesn't give me an answer of what to do. And I keep going back to, as leaders, we must consider whether we are building up or tearing down. I don't believe that punitive responses to misdeeds, whether it be on council or with children or in general, are very effective at impacting people's behavior choices. But I still struggle to know how to support, and that is the word I want to use, support the mayor. Over the past few months, we've been doing a lot of learning about Indigenous communities and their legal systems and how they approach dealing with someone who has wronged another person or the community in general. And what they do, the approach that is taken, is to reason with the person and to help them to find their path again. And we as council can do that collectively. We as a community, we need to find a way forward. We have all resoundingly condemned white supremacy. We have all confirmed that we do not believe that that content was acceptable. And I'm asking you, Mayor Armstrong, to let us support you in this. Let us help you. God knows none of us are perfect. And I hope that when one of us fails, the community and this council stand together to find a positive way forward. I thank you for apologizing. I thank you for saying that you recognize that you have not suffered what those communities have suffered. And I'm asking for all of you out there listening to come together. Nothing that we do, nothing I say can undo or change how it feels. but we can choose to move forward. And if anyone out there is still feeling hurt, which I believe there are, I would be honored to do anything I can, limited as it may be, to listen, to help. And thank you, Councillor Gerber. I am delighted at your suggestion of a committee. I think it is a very positive step for our community. So I would happily second it when the wording is finalized.
Thank you, Councillor Fetting. Councillor Gordick.
Like the rest of us, I've sort of had a really rough weekend. It started after I saw the mayor's letter go out. I appreciate that the mayor sent out the apology. I'm just a little concerned with some of the wording in it, and I'm sorry if I'm going to seem a little not going along with the rest. At the council meeting that we had in the summer, I had made a comment right away that one of the more hurtful things that you did besides the post was obviously your steadfastness not to remove it or to condemn for a while until you were sort of called out on it. So a forced apology to me, as recommended in the Integrity Commissioner's report, is not really necessarily an apology. So that being a given. But one of the things I still haven't seen in anything that you've posted, Mayor, is a condemnation of the White Lives Matter people and the white supremacy people showing up and actually saying that they're not welcome here. And your refusal to say that because everybody's welcome here, to me, is almost along the same lines as what happened in the States when that young woman was killed by a car, because both sides matter. I'm happy to move forward. I do have to say my piece, though. I think our township needs to heal. I have spoken to my family members who are people of color. I've also spoken to some of our Indigenous people. And sorry, I've said that wrong. My apologies to the Indigenous people that I know that have reached out to me and are not happy that your apology came out before even allowing us to have a look at the report and talk about it, sort of usurping our democracy and taking away some of the concerns that we have. However, we do need to heal. And I think you have 60 days, I think, and perhaps maybe I would be more appreciative of a better apology with regards to some of the people that have been hurt. I still find that a coerced apology is not an apology. It's like telling your little 5-year-old kid who broke the plate to go and apologize, and they don't want to because they're forced to. Yeah, my family is still hurt. My family of color is hurt. They do not want me to accept your apology, but I know we have to. And Councillor Fenning was so eloquent in everything that she said, and I agree with about 90% of what she said. But I'm still hurting for my family. So I'm offended also by the gentleman that spoke and accused specifically the three of us, the three women on council, so the misogyny that we're also being attacked because of what's happened here. I'm not happy that I'm being attacked because I'm a female. I'm not happy that the three of us are being called out because we happen to have a social media account. We have nothing to do with that anonymous account. I've never even posted on that anonymous account. I stay out of it because I do not want to go down a rabbit hole and argue with people I do not know who they are. And while I don't want to use my husband in this particular instance, but Nigel also spoke to the fact that he's been waiting 164 days for an apology. So again, your letter seems a bit insincere when the people that spoke to you and would have appreciated a word of sincerity from you personally, you haven't reached out. You were offered and you still have not reached out. I think you need to do a little bit more work, but as Councillor Fanning said, we're willing to work with you on that, but you still need to work just a little bit harder. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gordick. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the chair. First, I just want to say to my fellow colleagues around the horseshoe that I appreciate all your open and honesty this evening as we're here with this again. First, I want to say that I'm sorry to the IBPOC community and the fear and pain that you are all feeling. My heart is heavy. Many members of the IBPOC community reached out to me over the weekend and expressed their feelings over the Integrity Commissioner's report. I do want to comment that this is the first time that I have heard the mayor identify his white privilege. So Mayor Armstrong, thank you for that. I feel that that was a step forward, and all steps start with one step. So thank you for that one step that you've made. I am hoping for more deep reflection now that you've identified your white privilege. And I've read a lot of the books that you have read as well. And one of them specifically resonated with me, that the book that you read about from author Peggy McIntosh. And she talked about white privilege being an invisible weightless knapsack and how people of color have daily struggles that that people with white privilege don't see. And I thought, Mayor Armstrong, this was an opportunity that you could unmute yourself and just share just one thing that you've learned that are the daily struggles of someone in the IBPOC community lives with every day. And maybe I'll start with sharing one that was identified in those readings as well. And that's that, you know, people of color, this is just the simplest thing, but there's no band-aids in the color of their skin. And that's a tiny piece. But when you're white, that's not something that crosses your mind. And so, Mayor Armstrong, maybe just unmute yourself and just share one thing that you've learned that is a daily struggle for people in our community to know that you're doing the work. Oh, I think you're on mute there, Mayor, still.
Other experience in everyday life, and what from the readings you've uncovered that they feel that they are experiencing.
Sorry, Councillor Holman, I'm having a hard time hearing you, so I've just been informed what you've asked me, and what I found that in my readings and just everyday observations and is that people of color and other races do the things that I don't suffer. Is I don't have to fear driving down the street and being stopped because I'm of color, or I don't have that, and I never have. And I recognize that. I don't walk down the street and, as some have put it, that the sound of walking by a car and hearing the sound of doors locking because I'm walking by. I've never felt that. So I understand. That's why I say I understand what my white privilege is. I know that because, you know, I've never experienced it. I've never had to experience what people of color or other races have to endure. And I've always thought it wrong and will always believe that we need to really work hard to make that change so that that doesn't happen anymore. Everybody should have the right to be able to walk down the street and not be feared just because of the way they look. They have to be accepted until they prove otherwise, as we as white people have to do. We expect to be accepted until we prove otherwise, that we shouldn't be. And that's basically what you're asking me, and that's what I see.
Thank you. Thank you. That is the first time you have publicly said and expressed your white privilege and expressed an example of what the BIPOC, IBPOC community is feeling. So thank you for that step forward, because that's the work that has to be done. And that's where we need to go. That's the real work that has to happen for our community, for us united as councillors to do that. This evening, I spent the whole weekend rattling this around and what is the right thing to do. So the motion that I have prepared for this evening, that since I'm the last one to speak, I will just read what I had written. It was inspired from what was happened at the regional council. Sorry, I'm going to try to speak into my mic a little bit closer. I think I switch headsets. I don't know if that helps with Mayor Armstrong hearing me okay. Whereas in recent days and weeks, several events have gained worldwide notoriety and have ignited backlash against racism, both systemic and overt. And whereas it is important to acknowledge the role that elected officials can play in breaking down systemic barriers and promoting a more just society. And whereas given the responsibility we have as elected officials in an ever-changing community, it is important that we consistently seek to understand what we are doing right and what we can do better. Now, therefore, the Council of the Township of Wilmot hereby directs staff to facilitate anti-racism and sensitivity training for the whole Council of the Township of Wilmot, for the elected leaders, so we can operate the municipality through the lens of a more just and empathetic society. I say all of us, because I believe that all of us, this is a journey for all of us together, and all of us should have the same data, and we can all support each other. As even myself, I know that there's moments where we can become better and shed our, and become more aware. So I hope that you will support this motion this evening. I also support the directive from Dr. Williams, the Integrity Commissioner, on that the mayor continue this quarterly reporting until the end of this council term.
Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you, Chair Fisher. Just want to thank my fellow councillors for their heartfelt and eloquent words this evening. And I just want to share a little background from where my thoughts came from, just in the equity work that I've been doing since the summer, both in reading and listening and trying to do better that way, but also in an equity training that I'm just still in the midst of. And what sort of I've learned is that equity is sort of it's a confluence of your own story, the community you live in, and that's not your story, but everyone's individual story, the community you live in, and then the systems that are sort of in place in your community. And when you're looking at our system, the people making the decisions, the people who are being sanctioned, the people deciding on the sanction, I mean, we're all white voices. And while I think we've sort of come across around a consensus of accepting what the Integrity Commissioner has to say and reinforcing what we've done as a council, sort of above and beyond that, the reprimand, the ongoing work for Mayor Armstrong, which again, I was also grateful to hear you share tonight, Mayor. Appreciate that very much. I think that combined with Councillor Hallman's idea that we all continue to dig into this work deeper and together, and the general framework of a Black, Indigenous, Persons of Color Community Relations Committee, standing committee of council that meets quarterly, that will allow us to hear the voices that we don't hear when we're making decisions, to bring those voices closer to the decision-making table, and to allow us maybe to head off some of the problems we run into when we just aren't taking into consideration things that we ourselves don't yet understand as well as we could or as we should. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of that background, and maybe and to you, Ms. Middleholtz, maybe sort of looks like maybe a three-pronged, we're maybe converging on a three-pronged kind of approach tonight, that that acceptance of what Mr. Williams is providing tonight, with the understanding that what we've already done with the reprimand and the ongoing work is sort of an extension of that, and will stay in place, with also an acknowledgement, which I think is important, that any further violation we don't want to go there, and I think we're all trusting and hoping that wouldn't be the case. But I think that is an important point. I believe Mr. Bailey pointed that out, and it is an important part of the report, and I think we want to acknowledge that as well. Again, the idea of a BIPOC community relations committee, standing committee like sustainability or trails, but again, like maybe committee of adjustments or dog control, or some of those committees that members of the BIPOC community are paid an honorarium for their attendance and their participation. And thirdly, the idea, that Councillor Hallman suggested, that we all undergo the training. I think those are maybe three things that we're maybe starting to come to a consensus on this evening.
I like it. Thank you, Councillor Gerber. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Chair Fisher, to Ms. Middleholtz. Being that my original motion was for the mayor to do the quarterly reports, would that entail, because we've agreed upon we've come to a consensus that we'd continue to have those quarterly reports, would I need to do an amended motion, or is it just something that we accept? I just want to make sure we're following the right procedures, because it was a motion I raised. And further to that motion, I know it might have been an oversight just because of the way things happened organically with the meeting where Mayor Armstrong did his original quarterly report, and with the listing of the readings that he had done, the IBPOC people wouldn't have been aware because it wasn't on the agenda. Can we ensure that going forward that any quarterly reports are on the agenda so the IBPOC people can be aware, so that they can hear some of the changes that are happening and what the work that we're doing within our township, so that it's transparent about what's going on, as opposed to the original quarterly report where people didn't know that it was even going to happen.
Yes, go ahead, Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Chair Fisher. So the original motion, yes, it was written on the fly, so to speak. It was so there were certain aspects of it that it does not specifically request that it be in writing. So Mayor Armstrong has been doing it verbally, not including it on the agenda in September. We've corrected that now for December. Later this evening, it is listed on the agenda for Mayor Armstrong to provide his quarterly update, and it is our intention to continue doing that going forward. So if council would like, I have prepared something based on what I've heard so far, with the exception of the what I would call preamble that Councillor Hallman prepared. But I do have, and sorry, Councillor Gerber, it is 4-pronged, not just 3. But I have prepared a potential resolution if council would like to see. I'll do my share screen right now. And certainly there can be, right now it is just, shall we say, a draft. So if there are other things that council feels are missing, that need to be added, we can do so. Whether or not, thus far it has been verbal. And then we include the written afterwards in the minutes. If that needs to be something that council wishes to change, perhaps Mayor Armstrong wishes to comment further on that piece as to written versus verbal, but there's nothing to preclude it from being verbal at this time.
I think Councillor Fenning had her hand up too. Did you want to say something at this point?
Sorry. Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair Fisher. I just wanted to suggest that perhaps when we're talking about the committee, Councillor Gerber, would you accept it to, Clerk Middleholtz has actually written it as an advisory committee, and that's what I was going to say. I didn't hear the word advisory when you had suggested it, but it's in there, so great.
Does that look suitable to everyone? Or does anyone have any other comments? Or Councillor Gordon?
Through your chair, Fisher, to Ms. Middleholtz. Being that there's been a change of language and acceptance through the Indigenous people in the Black community, could you please change the order of Indigenous to be in front of Black? The new Indigenous people were first, and the acceptance of within the Black community to allow the changing of that is to be IBPOC. Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, I can't see if somebody has their hand up. That screen's disappeared. So does anybody else want to comment? Councillor Hall?
The one thing I do want to comment on is, while I see that the apologies were provided within 60 days, I do have one comment to Mayor Armstrong, that within your most recent apology, you identified some items that were due to the success of council as a whole, such as the flag raising. So while I was happy to read your comments that you were happy to be there, that was items that we were successful as all of council. I feel that this needs to be all-encompassing of your personal work, as this was the work that you need to do. So perhaps your revised message can include more details about your personal journey, as you really share with us this evening, realizing, you know, car doors, people, but just the life experience that the IBPOC community and the things that you want to personally work on to identify that. So I just want to make a comment on that. Okay, so back to what's in front of the quick screen here. I also wanted to propose that this should not be a budgetary item for Wilmot Council. I believe that us as individual councillors should pay for this on our own.
Is everyone else in favor of that? Okay.
So yes, if staff can facilitate it to get that for us, and then yes, the council will. Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments? No? Okay, so I guess we need a mover and a seconder and then a vote then. Councillor Gerber is the mover. And I don't see anybody for a second.
Sorry,
Councillor Holman, there we go.
It's hard to see all the faces when the
I
screen
can
sharing's
only
on.
I can only see me and 3 other people on.
You can scroll with the arrows up and down, but I know it's difficult.
There we go. Okay. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. All in favor? That's carried. So I guess at this point, I will be relinquishing my title. And back to Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Job well done, sir. Thank you. So
sorry, Mayor, can I say one last thing? Thank you for Mr. Williams for joining us tonight too. That was very informative of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, so the next item is correspondence from the Grand River Conservation Authority. There's a long recommendation there. I think you've all had an opportunity to read it. If there's any comments or questions on the recommendation that's there. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, just to Mr. Okrafka, I'm just wondering if you can add a little comment to it. As you know, we've been receiving numerous emails from our residents, especially with regards to some of our, paramount flooding issues here. I'm just wondering if you have any comments to add to that, so that residents kind of know where we're sitting as a township. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Councillor Gordick. I think the GRCA report's fairly self-explanatory. The regional report's also been provided. Certainly there is a lot of activity this weekend with respect to conservation authorities. Kind of twofold issues. One's the changing of, or proposed changes to the conservation authorities, and then it gets rolled into the minister's zoning orders, which is tied to it with a certain file, but in general is a new trend. Historically, minister zoning orders were used very sparingly and only for matters of clear provincial interest. I think it's fair to say that they're more common, and there's certainly, depending on which side of the fence you are, some excitement about the potential for them, and then obviously some concerns. It kind of goes back a bit, if I can elaborate, to the proposed open for business bylaws that the province previously introduced, suggesting that municipalities would have somewhat the similar power of a minister's zoning order to simply just change the zoning of land if it was for the purposes of promoting business. We, as Wilmot and all municipalities, I think, maybe not all, but certainly the majority of municipalities roundly opposed those measures being put in place, which the province then did withdraw from that legislation. Effectively, though, it's the same result, is that the province would seem to be taking the approach that there's too much bureaucracy and red tape, and that they have the power to clear that bureaucracy and red tape as they see fit, and they will do that. Minister's zoning order is a perfectly legal planning tool. And again, it comes down to when and how it should be used. It's not appealable by the municipality. And so from that perspective, I don't know that there's much that Wilmot Council at this point can do. We're not subject to one. Other municipalities in our region are, and certainly need to navigate with provincial staff what that ends up looking like. But from the Conservation Authority, I think the region's been clear, and GRCA has been clear that they're opposed to the changes to the legislation. Certainly, many members of the Provincial Greenbelt Committee have apparently resigned this weekend. Wayne Caldwell, who would be, he's a little bit older than me, but I would consider him a peer in the planning world. Obviously, he's much more researched and educated and prominent, but seeing Wayne Caldwell from the University of Guelph, formerly of County of Huron, resign his position says a lot, at least to the planners in the room, on the seriousness of this matter. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. Certainly, I think timing wise, if council chose to support the recommendations of GRCA or the region's resolution, which I believe you also were forwarded, that may be appropriate. Again, I think the concern is province wide. It's what the provincial government will do with that. It's not that this is unique to Wilmot. I think it's pretty much province wide that conservation authorities are concerned. And I don't know if that helps or not, adds anything.
So just to follow up through you, Mayor, again, I think it's just outside of Pickering. There's a lawsuit that's happened against one of the zoning orders. would the township, do we have any sort of legal recourse to, if they came after one of the properties that we felt would it have an impact within our flooding zone, or do we just sort of have to take it? I'm just sort of asking as a sort of general question.
Again, I'm not the township solicitor. However, from a planning perspective, my understanding is minister's zoning order is not appealable. We would receive the opportunity to participate with provincial staff in affecting the outcome. Certainly City of Cambridge staff, my understanding, have been working through that on a property in Cambridge. There may be other ones in the region that are coming up, but it's not something that you can just say, well, we're gonna oppose it. I think most things can be taken to courts. It's whether it has any standing in court. My understanding is that it doesn't. Again, I'm not township solicitor, but typically that's the power of the province with a minister's zoning order. That's why historically it's been used so sparingly, is that it's a pretty all-encompassing power that, for a matter of provincial interest, traditionally something like a Toyota plant needing to be located and to streamline that process, that might be a tool that they would use. For a general subdivision that's in a location that maybe doesn't comply, I'm not sure that historically that has been where a provincial government would exercise its authority, but it's not my place to tell the provincial government necessarily how they exercise that authority.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now is that what we're doing is basically supporting the GRCA in their concerns. That they're looking for many voices to bring their point across, that there are concerns, and we should all be concerned because of the whole idea is to the GRCA and other conservation authorities throughout the province are very concerned about their ability to protect our groundwater, and that is one of the biggest concerns, and to possibly undo all the hard work that they've done over the last several years that have been able to improve our groundwater and the river, where we get a lot of water from, the Grand River. So I think that's the important thing, is we, like, most people have noticed that this government does things, and then depending on the noise that they hear as to how far they carry it through. So you've all seen the recommendation. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Fenning, second by Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Next item is the bylaws. The recommendation that bylaw number 2020-44 be introduced, ready first, second, and third time, and finally passed in open council. Moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Are there any notice of motion? Any announcements? Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. This last Saturday, the Baden Optimus, Wilmot Optimus, and the Baden Chamber of Commerce held a food drive. So what they did, they split into 3 groups, and each group pretty much had about 8 or 10 people with a Santa Claus and a truck and a trailer on each one. And we drove around town. Les was there, and so was Mike Harris and myself. And the group I was with, we collected, we had an 8x12 trailer completely full. And it was pretty overwhelming to see how much food we donated and the excitement of the children as they saw Santa Claus coming down the street. It was really, really good day, and it was hats off to those groups that put that together. And lastly, very saddened to see the passing of Mark Murray. He played an important role in our community as a businessman, fireman, and counselor. And I never really knew him that well before council, but I really got to know him, and he was a great guy. Did a lot for the community, and we will really miss him and miss Murray's clothing as well.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Yeah, it was a perfect day for the collection, and the area that I helped to cover was great, and it was great to see the kids react. It's little ones running out to want to see Santa sitting on the back of a pickup truck, and some of them were escapees, so they had to be tracked down by their parents because they were so excited. I had a couple little ones run out in bare feet, so parents had to scurry. So yeah, but it was great to see the kids out, and it was great response from everybody. So I agree. Thank you very much. Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Armstrong. I just want to echo Councillor Fisher's comments in memory of Mark Murray, longtime downtown business owner, 28 years on the local fire department, retiring as district chief, 8 years as a township councillor on the Horseshoe. Passed away Wednesday, November 25th, 58 years old, far too soon. Had a chance to obviously serve closely with Mark for 8 years on council, and certainly got to appreciate his counsel and knowledge and understanding of the community during that time, and that will certainly be missed. However, it's been really neat just to see and hear just a number of people with individual stories of acts of kindness and generosity that Mark showed them, whether it be through his role in the clothing store, his role in the fire department, or just giving people clothing after fire and just saying, hey, don't worry about it, or being with a family in a time of need. In fact, just today after school, as I was leaving school, one of our custodial staff came in, and it turned out that Derek Holman had grown up next door to Mark on Lewis Street, and just wanted to talk about them playing together when they were kids, and just to sort of commiserate a little bit on his loss. So Mark, thank you so much for your service to the community, and it's been appreciated, and you'll be missed.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree, and you're right. He was a terrific member of the community, and a strong supporter of the good community we have. Councillor Hallman.
I just thank you to the mayor for your mention of École Polytechnique, the massacre that happened in Montreal 14 years ago. I want to thank Director Jackson for making sure that the flags were lowered yesterday. The community was, it was really important to the community. We have to agree appropriately with that, so thank you for that. And I want to thank Councillor Gordick and Councillor Fenning and their spouses, and I'd like to thank Howie and Manny for also coming out to volunteer for the Reverse Santa Claus Parade that happened the previous Sunday in New Dundee. It was amazing. Thanks to the park staff and road staff who contributed pylons, and obviously to Chief for the New Dundee firefighters who also came out. We all know that everybody loves to see them, and they're so appreciative of their help. So thank you to everybody who volunteered to put the smiles on those kids' faces. And we had just so many volunteers collecting donations for food, for toys, for the food bank. It was just so great to see all the smiling faces and cheer that it brought the community. I want to also mention my condolences to the Murray family. And echo that you guys said you have some beautiful condolences, but also the Heyer family. Dave Heyer, who owned a pet store downtown, passed away. It's been a tragic time for our community, and also the Cressman family. And in New Dundee, the Freed family. There's been a lot of people who were such active members of our community in their ways that were embraced by God's arms. So my condolences to their family. And as we head into the Christmas season, there are so many businesses in our community that could use your support. So please shop local, and wrapping paper at the hardware store. There's all kinds of things that you can do from big to small. So please think about spending your coins in our community. It does matter. It does help small businesses stay around in these trying times. Every penny counts. So please support local.
Thank you, Councillor Hallman. And yes, I was happy to see you after your work last Sunday and to hear that it was as successful as it was. Unfortunately, I was attending a couple of visitations. So, and one of those was Richard Cressman, who was another very prominent and very community conscious person. So, yeah, it was a sad weekend as well as happy on other parts. So thank you. Councillor Gordick.
Hey, Mayor Armstrong. So first of all, I'd like to also say thanks to Mr. Mike Coleman, who helped as well. All the cohorts were there, and so he rarely gets mentioned, but he does a lot of hard work. So thanks to Mike for being there with all the trucks and the driving and the picking up of the Dexter duct tape and stuff. I also want to give a shout out to our new hire. The Wilmot Family Resource Center has hired an elder. Her name is Nina. So welcome to the community, and I'm hoping that she'll be a valuable asset to our community within the Indigenous community, as well as to the general public for any issues that come up within the Indigenous as far as questions or where people want to sit. And finally, we did say something about Mr. Cressman, and as many people may already know, it was in the paper that Mr. Cressman died by suicide. So it is a trying time of year with COVID and the time of season. I just wanted to put a little shout out there that if anybody needs any assistance, or if they're having some troubles with dealing with some of their concerns that are coming up, we do have some great local support in our community with the Wilmot Family Resource Center, as well as ICC, and working with SAW to help individuals. So I just wanted to make sure that people were aware that there's help. So please reach out if anybody needs some.
Very good points, Councillor. That's very important, especially this time of year. It's very hard for people. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Most of what I wanted to say has been said. So I will say thank you to all the other members around the Horseshoe. Clearly, we have a lot of the same thoughts. And I want to offer my condolences again to the Murray family and to the wider community who cared for him as well. I am one of the people who has some stories about him as a firefighter. And on that subject, I want to say to our fire department, I know that this has been an especially difficult time with some of the events that have happened, and the calls that you guys get. And I know it's hard for a lot of the members. So please pass my thanks to them again. And my commendation to the Cressman family for having the courage to talk openly about mental health. I think that is such an important thing. We need to remove the stigma, and the best way to do that is to talk about it, and to talk about it with empathy and compassion. And I can't even imagine how his family must be feeling. But I want to commend them for their strength and courage to share, along with my condolences. It has been a difficult year, and I know that the few people that were mentioned here tonight are just some of the losses that our community has suffered. And they're the ones that we, sitting around this horseshoe, are aware of, because they're people who have touched our lives in some way. But our thoughts are no less with the rest of the community who have lost people whose names have not been mentioned here, especially in this difficult year where mourning doesn't have the same supports, the same physical gathering. So our thoughts are with you, and please reach out to the community supports that exist.
Thank you, Councillor Fenning. So I also have another duty tonight to our annual employee recognition. On behalf of Township Council, I would like to recognize and thank all staff for their tremendous ongoing efforts throughout the pandemic. Township staff are an invaluable resource, and we remain committed to providing safe and healthy work environment. Their efforts help us achieve the Wilmot vision of a cohesive, vibrant, and welcoming countryside community. Thank you, full-time staff, for adapting to a new operating environment. Thank you, part-time staff, for remaining committed to the township after time away on declared emergency leave. Thank you, senior management and members of the Emergency Control Group, for their cooperation and leadership while working with peers across the region to find consistent approaches to an ever-changing work environment. We would like to recognize and unfortunately say goodbye to the following retirees who left us in 2020. Scott Nanskerville, Sue Jackson, and Barb Wetlaufer. This combined group provided 68 years of service to Wilmot Township. We would like to recognize and welcome new full-time staff who have joined us in 2020. Sue Jackson, Trish Wilhelm, Kelly Lynn Baird, Justin Carafello, Adam Kohler, Nathan Wilkinson, Tharson Nimmerallen, I think. He'll get me for that. Nathaniel Falk, Brian Kim, Melinda Culp, and Curtis Shear. We would like to recognize the following employees for career milestones. Harold O'Krafka, 25 years of service. I'm biting my tongue, Harold. I'm not. Took that long to lose all your hair? Anyway. Patrick Kelly, 15 years service. Sherry Gutzik, 15 years of service. Michael Johnson, 15 years. Chris Thorne, 10 years. Christy Falk, thank goodness she had a name change. 10 years service. Josh Moore, 10 years. Mike Knapp, 5 years of service. And Joel Doherty, 5 years of service. The positive attitude of staff during these unique times has been nothing short of inspiring. I'm humbled to be working alongside this group of professionals and appreciate their continued commitment to serve the residents of Wilmot. Let's give a virtual round of applause to all staff. Perfect. So the next item is my quarterly report. And my report is that I continue to check on videos and read material. But most important thing on this quarter is what I did this morning was to attend, as I know 3 other councillors did as well, the workshop on Indigenous education. I found it extremely informative. There was a lot of stuff that the doctor talked about that I was aware of, but there was a lot more that he brought forth to us that was extremely bothersome to hear the stuff that has gone on in the past, and that we have to recognize and reconcile. And I think he will, I think with his help a bit too, we will be able to get through this, but it's going to take a lot of work. But yes, in the past, there has been an awful lot of horrendous things occurring, and which I wish that we could clear away, because it is very hurtful to, I think, all our hearts to hear what happened. And I think we need to acknowledge that. So I will be forwarding the information on to the clerk as to the stuff that I've been reading and listening to. And that's it for this month. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, the conversations that we were able to participate in this morning, we're going to be sent a slide presentation. Would that be something that we could put up with regards on our educational component? Is that something within the clerk's remit for that slide? If she takes a look at it, Ms. Middleholtz, to see if it's appropriate. There was some very relevant information and educational information that we learned, and I'm wondering if perhaps that might be something that would be a way forward on our educational page.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. As that information, Mayor Armstrong, would you mind muting yourself for a moment? Thank you. So I would like to, first of all, check, before I post anything, I would like to check. His last name has eluded me. First name's Darren. Dr. Okay, they're all mouthing it, but I don't know what it is. I can't remember. Thomas, thank you. I have to check with him, make sure that it's okay for me to post that. I don't want to infringe on his rights, intellectual property and whatnot. So after I do that, then I can see where we can go from there. Okay.
Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. Mayor Armstrong, your comments about this morning. Are you going to be taking the next, sorry, sucks on this one. Are you going to be taking the second course?
I haven't set anything up, but I will be looking into it.
Okay, so with a lot of Indigenous lessons, the next, a lot of Indigenous lessons, it's important to take the next step of learning about the 60s scoop. And so I'm hoping that perhaps it's something, a path that I could recommend or send you some resources, because I think that's another really great and important path for you to go down and explore next.
I will work at doing that. Nothing further, so confirmatory bylaw. Recommendation that bylaw number 2020-45 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on December 7th, 2020 be introduced, ready first, second, and third time, and finally passed in open council. Moved by Councillor Gordick, second by Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. Finally, recommendation that we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of
Excuse me, Mayor Armstrong.
Ms. Murray.
We have to do the recommendation that's for out of the closed session.
Oh, oh, she's saying the recommendation coming out of closed. Oh, where is it? Should have mentioned it to me earlier. Thank you. The recommendation that council accept the generous donation from Viola Herb of 2.6 meters of land across the frontage of 2781 Sand Hills Road, and that staff be authorized to proceed with obtaining the necessary reference plan and completing the land transfer. Okay, so you can take it down. Perfect. Somebody to move that? Councillor Fenning, Councillor Fisher, any comments other than to say thank you very much to Viola and family? All in favor? Councillor Fenning, you were kind of looking like you wanted to speak it.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment an extra thank you to Viola Herb. She came through with this in spite of the fact that she's had a very difficult year and the loss of her husband, who was such a phenomenal person in our community and did so much for the community. And the two of them have done just incredible things for our community. And this is just another one in that long list. So my thanks.
Okay. That motion was carried, folks. Thank you. Now, recommended that we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of the mayor. Nobody wants to move that? Oh, Councillor Gerber, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That's carried. Everybody have a safe drive home and a nice evening. Thank you.